All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here in Ashland, Ohio for the Realm Gaming Network Team Sealed. Charmer, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, despite having spent the entire night with you. I feel fantastic after doing some push-ups the correct way. You can check that out on Twitter, by the way. The Realm Gaming Network. If you check their Twitter, you can see a video of Flake's fantastic form.
Don't look at that garbage.
I'm doing wonderful, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, don't look at that garbage. I'm getting a lot of flack from people who aren't here, so that's perfect because I'm already way ahead on that, so it's all good. But friends, we have a special, unique style event, something that everybody likes, which is team events. This is Team Sealed, so the rules here: 12 packs. Make 3 decks. You can choose whatever heroes you want, but you have to use those 12 packs to create 3 decks. And the first games that we have ready to go, as soon as they're shuffled up and ready to go, we're going to jump into them. But these are really awesome events. Have you ever done team events for any of this, for any card game, frankly?
I don't have any friends, so
okay.
No, of course not. But if I did, I would have participated and had a wonderful time. They are a fantastic format, and jokes aside, yes, I've done them. They're actually one of my favorites. I'm particularly excited for this one because limited events are my personal favorite. It's like solving an extra puzzle, and so we've got that because it is sealed. We've got the team event, so you have the camaraderie, the teamwork, et cetera, et cetera. But also, I'm really excited because this is our first real look on a broadcast at Uprising. This is Team Sealed Uprising, so we're going to get to finally see the new cards in action. We're going to see dragons and ninjas and ice baby. It's going to be a wonderful time.
No, absolutely. And you know what they say, go ninja, go ninja, go.
Go ninja, go
and
ninja,
that's
go.
what we get first up. I believe the first matchup will be FaB versus Dromai, and I think that this is actually the first time on broadcast that we can even say that we've seen a FaB versus Dromai official, a tournament setting. And again, team events were something that we got in Las Vegas for the Uprising event, but it was Blitz. It was a constructed Blitz format. It wasn't with these new heroes. There was the Uprising Sealed event, but it wasn't a team event. This is different, and team events are unique rules in such that of the 3 matches, the team that wins 2 of the 3 get the win. It has nothing to do with, aggregate or anything like that, but that's the way to go. So if you falter, you've got 2 other opportunities for your team to lift you up. The games are about ready to rock and roll, so we're going to go take you to the action for the, once again, Realm Gaming Team Sealed. And as you can see there on your left, that is Scott playing FaB. On your right, that is Matt playing Dromai.
Yeah, the Dromai matchup here is going to be very interesting for me personally because when you're in a sealed environment, you might not have access to all of the really powerful dragons. A lot of times, and I think this format, you're going to rely on cards like Rake the Embers to see what you can get done. Also, again, sealed, you're going to notice not necessarily full equipment spreads. We see a lack of a chess piece with the Dromai player. And here to open things up, we've got FaB trying to get some early pressure on what we like to call turn 0. This is a pretty safe time to block if you are the Dromai player, but also keep an eye on potentially using the Miter as a way to generate ash before your own turn.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point there. So we're opening up here with a brand with Cinderclaw, which is a great opening piece. It sort of fixes the rest of your combat chain if necessary. It's coming in as a 3 for 0, natural go again, already built in, and it means that the next link for your Draconic is Draconic amidst whatever other qualities it has, whatever talents, whatever classifications, it becomes Draconic. And what's important is that FaB's ability needs Draconic chain links in order to really get cheaper and cheaper, recover those Phoenix Flames. You see that there's already a Phoenix Flame in the graveyard there, right, Charmer? And that is part of FaB's ability as well. So I like the point you made about the Miter. A Miter is a token. It's a piece of equipment, but everybody gets access to one. And based on Dromai's ability of creating ash on every red pitch, having an outlet like Miter early on for Dromai is crucial because Dromai needs those ash to turn into ash wings to create pressure.
Now, real quick, just to recap what happened here for the FaB player. We had that brand opening. Didn't really matter on the Draconic part. It would have mattered if there was like a Scar for Scar that followed up that's not Draconic, but it was instead followed up with a Rising Resentment. And now this is a card that has an on-hit where if it damages your opponent, and it did get 1 damage in, you can banish a card and essentially reduce its cost equal to the number of Draconic Chain Links that you have, or at least less than the number. So because it was the second one, they were able to banish that card that traditionally costed 1, play it for free. That kept things going. They then followed that up once they had the 3 Chain Links with activating FaB. The ability allows them to get that Phoenix form from the discard pile for free because you have 3 Chain Links at that point. And then that's why we're seeing all of that pressure early. That's what FaB does. If you are somebody who loves big Chain Links, right, playing 4, 5, 6 attacks a turn, FaB is going to be a hero that you will thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what FaB does from a constructed standpoint. I know that a lot of people were salivating at the fact that not only are you getting new Ninja cards, you're getting Ninja with talent, with a Draconic talent. You and I have no talent. We are basically classless, talentless schmucks, right? That's us. FaB's got the whole package. FaB's got the Ninja and everything else. Now, there is an interesting element here. Now, that is a checklist. Now, what that does is, given the fact that Dragon's Charmer are double-sided, that is basically a proxy to say that, here, this is the card that this is representing.
All right, there is a number of things I want to note about this exchange. First, they started with a Rake the Embers to create the Ash. It was, I believe, a yellow, and they opted then to not transform the Ash they created so they could set up this play. But also, as they were playing the checklist, they reached over to the side, and I happened to see that they were going between 4 different dragons. So this means this Dromai Sealed player has at least 4 of what I call the flippy dragons, the nice, really cool double-sided cards. The one that they went to get, I believe, is Yendurai, which is the one that has the endurance token. So essentially, if you're trying to kill it with damage, you have to do it twice because the first time it's going to negate or kind of prevent that damage. So this is a great way to establish board presence because against FaB, you don't have great ways to naturally stop this unless in your pool you have access to like Brothers in Arms or other generic attacks that will pop the Phantasm.
Right. Also noted, these aren't like Spectral Shields or other auras that have Spectra that stop the combat chain. You can toss attacks at it. Now, that one counter, that one kind of shield counter, if you're familiar with other card games, there's usually some type of effect that a card can have that absorbs all damage and negates it for the first instance. What's fascinating is that this particular set, Uprising, has a lot of different outlets to do small amounts of damage, be it Singe, for example, as Wizard, the Phoenix Flames doing 1 damage to poke at it. What I like about this is that your Yendurai only has 3 health. And for the FaB player, for Scott, you've got the Ember Blade. And the Ember Blade is doing 3. So this can be an efficient, you can deal with Yendurai efficiently, but at the same time, Yendurai in that case is it's tanking damage, and it's already swung for some damage. So it's a nice way, it's a nice annoyance for the Dromai player. But like you mentioned, Matt on Dromai had to find 4 different had to go through 4 different dragons. I'm curious to see what else was pulled out of this pool.
Yeah, I am hoping that we get to see more dragons because honestly, they're just a really neat part of this set. They're kind of iconic in my opinion. When you think about Uprising, forever now you're going to think about dragons, right? They go hand in hand. So I hope we get to see more. Another thing I wanted to point out about that Yendurai is the endurance token does prevent up to 3 damage, but it only does it 1 time. So if you're a FaB player, you can get rid of the endurance token with something like a Phoenix Flame and then swing the sword. It does still soak 2 attacks though, so annoying to deal with, but you do have some kind of creative outlets if you're the ninja and you want to get rid of it. Here we see some attacks coming in that are just being blocked by the Dromai player, trying to keep that health afloat.
And that's fine. And this is, similar to other kind of stall-out strategies, a little bit of more defensive strategies. Once you get those dragons out, you can block out a lot and have a free swing. The weapon that Dromai has access to allows your dragons to swing for free. It allows them to attack for free. So when you have a 3 on the board that you don't need to pay for, that's a plus. That's like a Shimmers with 2 counters on it, for example. That's kind of how that goes. So let's see, we got to... apparently the chat wants to know where I've learned to do push-ups. I learned those from Tan and Grace, actually, who is my personal trainer. I basically threw out any options to train with the Dalen Mack. But Tan and Grace was the one who taught me how to do push-ups. As you can tell, I am not good at them. And in that push-up contest, because my coach was Tan and Grace, I finished 2nd place, which is fitting.
It is worth noting that it wasn't even a contest. I was just doing them as part of my normal routine, and
Show off.
the other folks decided to join in. I want it to be known, I did not embarrass them on purpose. They did it to themselves.
Wow, what a backhanded compliment. So backhanded.
You know what else is backhanded?
Yeah, that you know what? That whatever that statement was a two-sided card. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know what else is backhanded?
Summon, yeah, it was basically invoke embarrassment.
Getting back into the game and the
Sorry
two-sided
about
cards, what I mentioned earlier is exactly what's happening. This is a 1 damage attack. It's an Inflame coming from the FaB, but it's getting rid of that endurance token on the Yender Eye. So now it will be opened up to a sword attack. It looks like that's going to be the path here.
And it's great. And these are the kind of cleanups that you have to do. We saw this yesterday during the constructed event, in the classic constructed event, is that when you're dealing with auras, you have to clean them up. You can see how dirty those can be. And these dragons, they're not illusions, Michael. They're dragons. They're fire-breathing beasts.
They are actually illusions as well. They are made of ash, constructed to look like dragons, but they are still illusions.
Okay, listen. Stop it. You already beat me in the push-up contest, which you said it wasn't a contest. just for the record, Charmer moved tables around, created an open space in front of everyone, and said, I'm just going to do some casual push-ups in front of a crowd. And that's what it was.
There was no table moving. I said, we're going to go eat lunch, and I'm going to do it quickly. And then you did it. So.
Hey, if you're going to fabricate things, so am I. And speaking of fabricating things, that's the worst segue ever. So we're just going to continue onward as the life totals here are actually pretty healthy for both. 19 for Scott on 5, 14 for Dromai. That is being played by Matt. And so there's another dragon.
Yeah, this is just going to likely be a 1-1. This is actually a bit of a bummer. That looks like that's a red Rake the Embers. And the problem with that is that that can transform up to 3 ash. It creates 1, and then you can transform up to 3. But because you didn't have any previously, you only get to make the 1-1-1. But it leaves kind of like 1 behind from the pitch. There was a red pitch there as well that got created by Dromai's hero ability, and that allows the second flippy dragon, as I like to call him. We really need an official name for whatever the two-sided ones are.
Yeah, I mean, Chad can help us out on that one, and we're not good at this.
This one is, I believe, the one that does arcane damage when it attacks. It should be, I believe, a 2/3 that deals 1 arcane damage to up to 2 allies. The Azolai, it's tough for me to pronounce. I apologize. I'm from the Midwest and uncultured. So,
hey, we agree.
But nonetheless, this one is going to be the 2/3 deals arcane damage when it attacks. And that is more relevant, I think, in a Dromai Mirror because you can ping off some of the 1 health dragons, but this still represents an attack for 3, just like the previous Yender I did.
Yeah, and again, attack for 3 split into 2 different sources, which is great. There are cards that are just, some of these dragons are just built to shut down other deck archetypes. For example, the amount of times I've played Sealed or I've played Draft where I'm playing Icelander, and you walk up and you see Themai. And Themai is basically a absolute killer for the Icelander matchup. But in this case, Azvolai is not bad in the mirror match as well. But this is fine. This is a different story. Azvolai would have been a great target to go ahead and, like you mentioned, clear out some Ashwings. But in this case, it's 3 damage, 2 physical, 1 arcane. As you can see, it's starting to get chipped down. And the strategy for FaB, oftentimes you're looking at this and you're thinking, everything I have is just pure gas. It's all red attacks. They all have natural go again. You basically have 12 packs to sift through to find the best stuff. So oftentimes your thought process here, Charmer, is to just go face. It's just to race them down. But
absolutely. And I think that depending on the dragon, there are some that I think you want to clear up, but depending on the dragon, you might even see the FaB player choose to ignore them at some point when you hit kind of that corner. I do want to point out, I mentioned the lack of a chess piece for the Dromai player, but our ninja here has a full set of equipment, and those pieces of equipment are incredibly relevant here. The boots have Arcane Barrier, so in this particular instance, it gives you a way to deal with the arcane damage from the dragon. Sash can be a resource, and then we also have Heat Wave, which I think is a massive piece in these limited formats for Uprising, specifically for FaB, because it can represent as much as +3 damage on some turns. We've seen cards like Inflame already played, so we know getting those Phoenix Flames back are part of the game plan. This is going to be an opening attack. I believe it's another Rising Resentment with Go Again. I can't tell the color. I believe it's yellow. But this should just be essentially a quick Go Again because it's the first chain link, so you're not going to be reducing any costs. You would banish a 0 to play a 0, essentially.
Mm-hmm. When you're building sealed decks or you're drafting, a lot of times the text on the cards is non-applicable because it's very circumstantial.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think we're realizing what's happening here. So the text on this says less than the number of draconic chain links. So for the on hit, so if it's your first hit, it can only banish a 0, and you can't reduce the cost of a 0, so that's no help. Now, if Rising Resentment is played as the second chain link, then that means you can banish a 1 or less. That's what the player, it looked like they were trying to do, because that was a 1-cost card that they had revealed the first time, and now they're doing it here because now they're on the second chain link. So just worth noting that some of these ninja cards say less than, not less than or equal. So you have to really have them on like chain links 2 or 3 to get the full value. They figured it out, though. Both players now arriving to where they would have naturally.
And coming up with Dust Runner Outlaw, again, a 1 for 4 attack, Go Again, blocking 2. We've seen these cards in Welcome to Wraith. This is kind of like a leg tap, but it's a draconic leg tap. And these are those kind of value cards that you really want. We've seen FaB just continuously chain together these massive attacks. The Dromai player here is on the back foot a bit because eventually you're going to have to start blocking this. And if you can't outrace a FaB player that has had 12 packs to sift through. And let's be real, we're looking right now through basically all the Draconic Ninja attacks, and most of them, a lot of them, a gigantic portion of them have natural Go Again, and another gigantic portion of them have conditional Go Again. You are basically not, there's very little cobbling together. There's not much construction that is necessary. It's just right out of the box. All your cards are going to be chained together. Having the Phoenix Flames recurring with the FaB ability, there's no problems. I'm actually usually in draft when you're really struggling, or in sealed when you don't necessarily have the best kind of pool to choose from. You have 6 packs or you're drafting 3 packs. You're seeing a lot more use of the Emberblade because it does swing for 3, for 2. It's not a very efficient attack, but it's a draconic attack. It helps you out. We haven't really seen Scott swing with the Emberblade very often because of the fact that the hand has just been that good.
Yeah, and so here we saw a burn away. That's why that Phoenix Flame is in the banish pile. You can choose to banish a Phoenix Flame to give it Go Again, and now we're seeing the FaB activation to get the other Phoenix Flame back because they had played a second one earlier, so there were 2 available. This is now a decision. You can try to poke for 1 here and continue to pressure, or sometimes, I know it might seem weird, but sometimes just arsenaling the flame can make a lot of sense because it ensures a certain chain link number, or again, the draconic chain links matter. So where a traditional ninja cares about combo lines, Flake mentioned leg tap, for example. You do leg tap into
Rising Knee Thrust,
Knee Thrust, et cetera. But with FaB, it's instead caring about the number of draconic chain links. So that is your combo line, if you will. The draconic leg tap counts because it's draconic, and then so on and so forth. So sometimes arsenaling a Phoenix Flame just to ensure you'll hit a number of links in the future is a safe way to go. But they did end up playing it for the damage, trying to keep the pressure, and I think that's what you have to do as FaB. Meanwhile, our Dromai player trying to get a little of offense going here while generating Ash, and this is where you want to try to keep things close, then make use of your dragons. Essentially, you're going to get to a point where you try to block out most of the ninja's turn and then clap back with a dragon, rinse and repeat until they either deal with your dragons or you kind of overwhelm them going wide. It's very similar to Prism's playstyle, if you're familiar with that, but not quite the same.
Excuse me. So that right there is a sweeping blow. When you attack, you create an Ash, and that's a very important element to it. It costs 1 ultimately, but it does have natural Go Again, so you're getting some value here. Attacking for 3, create an Ash. Scott's in a position here where if you like your hand, you just continue getting the pressure, because Scott can absolutely blow past the 9 damage threshold with 4 cards. It's not a problem. You have a few Go Agains. You can swing with your Emberblade if necessary. You have 1 blue. You'll be able to do a whole lot of nonsense. Not to mention, let's be real here, like you said, the whole ninja kit, and in limited, equipment has such excessive value. It's so important. It's like having a card that is always on the board. It's extending your reach. It's just getting more utility, and that is always important.
All right, so just a quick recap of what happened there. We saw a yellow skittering sands get played that turned that ash that was created before into a 1/1, but it had a temporary boost for the turn, so it was swinging for 3. And then because of the go again, you were now able to follow up with the dragon attack of Asvalai, and that's why you see the dice there representing the 2 physical and the 1 arcane. So Dromai trying to keep things close, trying to close the gap, and they do. So we're going to be at 9-all at the resolution of this turn. One thing I do want to point out, as you talk about deck construction and what each hero wants to do, I haven't seen many red cards actually pitched, and that's what you want as Dromai, so that you have a continuous source of ash. But many of the ashes that have been created were from cards themselves. I wonder if there's a shortage of actual quality red pitch cards for the Dromai player.
Keep in mind that you are also sharing a pool with the player on your team that's possibly running FaB, right? So FaB also wants red cards, and a lot of the Draconic cards are going to be red. And if you're sharing that pool, and you may have just whiffed on a lot of those illusionist red cards, the Draconic illusionist cards. So if you need to go into just the pure Draconic cards that can be shared between FaB and Dromai, maybe the FaB player needed them more. Maybe the Dromai player is taking a little bit more of a hands-off approach and taking a little bit more of a defensive posture in their game plan. And against FaB, that can be a dangerous gambit, because FaB can really push the damage.
All right, so this is going to be a Rebellious Rush. I believe this is a red one. So this is a 2 for 5 with natural go again. And it is Draconic, so it starts off the chain link count. But this can sometimes catch up and catch people by surprise, because when you're playing against FaB, you get kind of accustomed to, they either play the 1 for 4 with go again, or it's like a 0 for 3 with go again. And obviously the sword is for 3. And then out of nowhere, they will spend just a little bit more pitch, but they'll come in and crack you for this 5 with go again, and they're going to follow it up with a Flame Call Awakening. Now, because they played a red card before, Flame Call allows you to search your deck for a Phoenix Flame, reveal it, and then put it into your hand. And this should be the 3rd Phoenix Flame, so the last one left in the deck, because we have the one that was banished and the one that should still be in the discard pile. But this also means that you find this Phoenix Flame, and if you play it this turn, then you'll hit your 3 chain links, allowing you to get the other one back from the hero activation. So again, just extending this chain over and over and over again. That's exactly what FaB wants to do.
Flame Call Awakening is an absolute MVP, I believe, in like the format. I think that anything that allows you to go ahead and source out that extra Phoenix one.
Yeah, I've been spending all weekend, having discussions about what's your pack one, pick one, right? A lot of people love Scar for Scar, naturally. A lot of people love Blaze Headlong, naturally. But I don't know if it's 100% my pack one, pick one, but I am very high on Flame Call Awakening because it's flexible. Both Dromai and FaB can run it. It's only Draconic. It's not Ninja. And because it tutors out those flames, it means, one, you're getting access to a resource, whether that's a red pitch for Dromai or, again, your Phoenix Flames for FaB, but also by getting them out of your deck, you don't draw them later. The Phoenix Flames are great, but you kind of rarely want to draw them naturally. You want things like the Awakening that brings them out and enhances them. So here we see this one played, and the Heat Wave is activated, so it's swinging for 2. And again, there should still be one in the discard pile. Yep, we see the FaB activation to go get the other one. So this is going to be a lot of value from the Heat Wave.
No, definitely. And, when it comes to getting value from the Heat Wave, again, breaking the Heat Wave allows your Phoenix Flames to be +1 damage. Being greedy with that card is never right. 2 is usually the Goldilocks zone for busting that. If you can get 2 Phoenix Flames to go back to back, that's the way. Now, obviously, once in the Vanish Zone, you're never going to get 3. So this is the best use of that particular piece of equipment. And, getting the 2 extra damage essentially for free. And they're kind of pokes, and it's coming in at instant speed. So should they just declare no blocks off the 1 on the Phoenix Flame, you can just pop it, poke in for the extra damage, and then the second Phoenix Flame comes in for 2. And in a format where basically your life total is 20, getting in there for a free 2 attack, that's 10% of your opponent's life total, right? And that's significant. So great usage of the Heat Wave here. Double Phoenix Flame, and right now, Matt on Dromai is down to 3. Scott feeling very, very comfortable at 9. Pushed a lot of damage, but it seems like to me like Matt just likes his hand. You know, blocking a little bit, but you got to put something out there. Something's got to give.
One of the things that we're going to have to keep an eye on throughout the day, and that's another reason why I'm so high on Heatwave, it's probably my favorite equipment that's not a legend in this set, is that the activation is an instant as well. So you can use it as a combat trick to catch people off guard, and because the Phoenix Flames are also a zero-cost attack, there are very few attack reactions in this set, but the ones that exist for Ninja do typically care about being a zero-cost attack. So between Heatwave and the reactions, sometimes a seemingly, harmless 1 damage attack can turn into an explosion that ends up getting a victory. So
yeah, Rapid Reflex, which is kind of like it's a worse Razor Reflex, but in this format, anything that can go on top for an additional 3 damage
I will challenge the worse Razor Reflex thing because...
No, it's worse.
No, this blocks for 3, where Razor Reflex does not.
Yeah, but you want to do damage, but you don't want to block with attack reactions. You want to be attacking with attack reactions.
Traditionally, yes, but in a pinch, I think that is very relevant, and certainly in this format because in the FaB mirrors, it gets very, very tight in life totals very quickly. Like most of them are over in like 3 rounds. So sometimes a block for 3 is a lifesaver.
True, and the other thing is that Razor Reflex also allows you to use it on a weapon, but whatever. What do I know? I can't do push-ups, so I'm clearly the clown in this gig. But I get what you're saying. Blocking for 3, there's a lot of 3 blocks in this set is another big point to make. And we've seen, coming off of, let's say, Tales of Aria had a lot of 2 blocks. Unless you were playing Guardian, you were really sort of up against the wall when it came to efficiently blocking things. And in this case, there are a lot of 3 blocks. So the format itself is not as... it's not as accelerated because you are able to efficiently block a lot of attacks that come in for 3, even 4 potentially. So being able to be a little bit more steadfast with the cards that you're playing and blocking with is important in this format.
All right, so our Dromai is trying to get within striking distance themselves. We saw some dragons created. That is a Thamai. We also have the Ashwing that was created. It just attacked for 1. Because a red card was played. All of the, again, I call them the flippy dragons. They're all red cards, and so when you invoke any of them, your go again for your dragons is turned on for the turn. So that's why you see the Ashwing attack. It has natural go again from the Dromai ability, the hero ability at that point because of the invocation of Thamai. But we see a block come out. What was that about blocking as Ninja? We see a block on the Thamai here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Now, Thamai, like I mentioned earlier, is very much just kind of a wrench in the system for an Icelander to deal with. However, it's not completely irrelevant against FaB. FaB's ability is for 3 resources on once per turn instant. So you can do it on your opponent's turn if necessary to recover a Phoenix Flame if that's what you need.
I have done it in response to an opposing strategic planning because I didn't want it shuffled away, the Phoenix Flame.
Right.
So it is very relevant. Another thing to point out, though, is I believe it's all abilities, including equipment as well. So something like Miter should be turned off as well, and that is potentially relevant.
Yeah, that dragon is a pain in the ass. Absolutely. I don't know what more.
It's a pain in the ash.
Oh, my son of a... Yes, it is. Damn it. Yes, it is. When are you leaving? No, I'm kidding. I love you, buddy. It's absolutely definitely relevant in this case as well, as basically the FaB ability is turned off. And sometimes you're just hunting for that first Draconic Chain Link. Certain cards that say, if this is the second Draconic Chain Link, get go again. So if you're stuffed with cards that only have conditional go again off second Chain Link or better, sometimes you need to pitch a blue to get a Phoenix Flame swing in for 0, seemingly, just to activate the rest of your turn.
Something else I do want to point out about Thamai, like we're focusing on, obviously, the activations on the board, but there are some cards in this set, specifically generics, that are also very relevant on your opponent's turn. There are things like the Oasis Respite, for example. That is a card that cannot be used as a reaction when Thamai is on the board, because it says you can't play cards or activate abilities. And so really this is turning off any sort of defensive reaction. Thamai is just a nightmare in general, but here we're seeing a massive attack come through. Another dragon invoked. This is the 6/1 that if it connects, it threatens 3 arcane damage as well. So it's essentially swinging for 9. The one drawback, of course, is that it does have 1 health. If you're coming from other card games that I won't mention, this might feel almost like a ball lightning because it's all offense with low health. But yes, this is a huge attack forcing that FaB to block. Because, again, sometimes that matters as a ninja.
Yeah, as the life totals dwindle, momentum is, increasingly important. You can no longer make the decisions of, I'm just going to tank the damage to maintain a hand.
This is limited. There is no mask to help with that momentum, unfortunately, for our ninja, so blocking is the best recourse. If you could see Flake's face right now at home, he has had it with me. But
if there was a paper shredder, I'd put you through it, but I love you so much that it hurts.
This is an activation of the Silken Form. I believe it creates the Ashen Dragon, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've actually been blessed with the...
Oh, that's a nasty dragon. That is a nasty, nasty dragon. We're talking about that swings. It's sort of a glass cannon. It swings for 6, has 1 health, and upon it's Vincerakai. Yeah,
Vincerakai. That was the one that
if you say it
I made
3
the ball
times,
lightning
you
reference
summon
for.
a demon.
So that got cleaned up, but I was specifically trying to figure out what the Silken Form was forward for, because I thought that the activation for that was to create another dragon, right? It should create the 1/1 dragon as an instant out of Ash, and because it's forward, I wondered if that was just shorthand for, yes, we're using it to create a dragon, and that's why the other block was there, but... we will
part of the
check that out here in just a moment, because I can't remember if there was an alternate mode on it or not.
Part of the beauty of this format and new cards, Charmers.
Oh, no, it is. I'm correct. So I just need to trust my memory here. So, yes, normally Silken Form just simply... as an instant, you can activate it to create another Ashwing. And with it forward like that, I think that's just shorthand for the players here to say, hey, I turned an Ash into an Ashwing and I'm swinging. Because otherwise I am confused by this positioning.
Yeah, a lot of the beauty of new cards, and for us as casters, is sometimes, there's only so much that we've had access to and practice with casting. In this entire weekend, I think you and I have done... 5-6 drafts, I think, between ourselves, possibly, maybe 3 or 4, or, we've had a bunch of opportunities, never as much as the players out there as well, so seeing these new cards is different.
So here's the thing, we got derailed. We have it all backwards. Allow us to rewind this. The ninja is the one attacking.
Yes.
The dragon was blocking. So that Silken Form is forward because they used it for the Quell. And now they've used a Miter, they pitched red to create an Ash, and now they are using the instant that creates a ward effect on the Ash to block this attack.
No, yeah. So. The Scott, as the fine player, is in the driver's seat here. The dragon that's being blocked is the invoke the dragon side of the card. I don't think it's the action. It's not the form of the dragon.
So earlier, this is my mistake. So earlier, when the dragon was down, there was a die that was placed next to the dragon, and that usually is done when the player is attacking to signify their value.
Right.
And so I misidentified that it was a dragon that was doing the attacking, but it was actually blocking. So our ninja here is attacking. The Vincerakai has blocked. The Silken Form makes a lot more sense being forward to me now, because that's a Quell activation. And then again, we have a Miter activation, creation of the Ash from the pitch to the Miter, and now this ward instant played by the Illusionist to block that out. So it makes a lot more sense to me.
It does.
Glad we got here.
I was here the whole time. I'm waiting for you to show up, buddy. No, I'm kidding.
I'm still crushing you in push-ups. My apologies.
So as we see right now, this is the position where late in the game, when the health totals are so low to the ground, players like Matt who are on the defensive, what do? They're going to draw up and just pass back to Matt on FaB, and FaB is going to have just endless amounts of
I was gonna
attacks.
say, before you draw up, you do still get one dragon attack.
Right. A swing for 3 is not insignificant here. It's going to cost a card from Matt. So, again, that's not bad. Again, blocking it out. It's a free attack. So, now you're up against the clock, however. And if you're just going to be continuously attacking the Dromai player, that's going to cost cards out of your hand too. But the bonus here is that Matt will always have access to recovering a Phoenix Flame. That is constant pressure. And if they're just trading 1 for 1, being able to recur that attack, even if it's just 1, is significant.
Well, you also have access to the Ember Blade. That's the one advantage of FaB in this format, is it's the only non-conditional weapon. Dromai obviously requires a dragon. Icelander requires you to play a non-attack before you can activate the Waning Moon, whereas FaB, as long as you've got that 2-pitch, you can swing for 3. So between that and the Phoenix Flame, as you mentioned, easier ways to generate pressure. But I do want to point out that was a great block that just that single dragon attack got out, because that took away a Take the Tempo. That's a Majestic from this set that is a 1 for 5. And while the on-hit likely not relevant here, that's still a lot of offense for pitch this late in the game. So that was a good pull when they swung with their dragon.
Sash creates another resource for Matt here. If you played a red card, you can bust that out and go ahead and get a free resource. So there's one floating. You can see there in the pitch zone. Matt just kind of trying to piece this together. Again, they're up against the clock as well. Charmer, and we don't know how the other 2 tables have resolved. If it's a 1-1, this is definitely a very pivotal matchup here. Again, in the team format, your side of the table needs to win 2 of the 3 matches. So we're not sure how the other 2 matches have shaken out, but this one's going down to the wire.
And now we have another attack in. You're just trying to get any damage through with your opponent at 2. All you need is one of those classic FaB turns where you go wide enough to get the final damage in. Against Illusionist, there's also a fair number of just non-blocks sometimes because there's no ash on the board. So if you have one of those wards, for example, or if they're playing Phoenix Flames in Dromai like you sometimes do, that's a possibility. But here, we see the FaB activation, but I think we might actually pitch the Flame for an attack, because with your opponent at 2, the Phoenix Flame obviously doesn't get it done. And so, yes, that's exactly the play here. We're just trying to go for the throat and close this game out, but it does look like these are going to have block values, and there's going to be a block here.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine. And what also worth mentioning here is the fact that that was a 2-for-1 trade. The one card has peeled away 2 other cards. Now, the clock is essentially the enemy for both players over here. Again, we don't know what the other 2 games, how they finished, but if there was 1-1, this could potentially be a nasty little double loss as a tie, but we don't want to get to that. We want this to resolve. So at this point, again, the Dromai player just draws back up, and you go from there. He's going to swing with Thamai. That's 3 attack, an efficient block, 1 card. It's back to Scott's side here on FaB, and eyes on the clock is very, very important here.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they're trying to question right now is what's going to happen with the clock, because I know that there was an announcement made not too long ago regarding the time that was left, and so I think they're trying to get some clarification for how this is going to close, and that was it. Yeah.
So I think what happens again, this is another unique element to this format, Charmer, is the fact that if the other 2 games resolved as 2 wins on one particular side, that game that we watched could have been, I don't want to say irrelevant, but it could have been, it wouldn't have factored into the overall result of the team win or loss. So if Scott's side or Matt's side both won their games, that game becomes moot. You can play it out, but with the clock ticking down and it was kind of leaning towards one side's favor, it was not going to factor in. That's the beauty of team, is that you just need 2 of the 3 to pull it together and get it done.
Absolutely. So a little sad just because we didn't get a conclusion. I wanted to see how that was going to finish. I love when games get down to that. Both players, at sub 5 health, duking it out, trading cards back and forth. I would have, liked an ending, but still a great match to watch. Obviously, again, this is our exposure to the new set, and it does sound like we're going to be jumping into round 2 relatively soon, because, again, that one went to time, and I just heard them announce that they're going to be pairing right now.
Yeah.
So I don't even think we're going to go to a break.
I think we should. I think we will. And the reason why we're going to go to a break is we need to also get set up on the tables and such like that. So we're going to take a very short break, a couple minutes. We will be back shortly, and then we're going to get all the other stuff sorted out and put together. But we want to show off some Icelander matches as well. So
Yes.
we'll be back in literally a couple minutes. Don't go too far. All right, round 2 is just underway. The feature table is just getting shuffled up and ready to go. We've got an Icelander match finally, Charmer. I'm really
Finally,
excited.
we waited one round.
Yes,
You're just
too long.
such an Icelander stan that
Not-
he's like, we didn't get it round 1. How dare us? We
Not-
finally get an Icelander.
Not
Icelander
on purpose.
isn't even a new hero, technically, because we had her in Everfest.
Sure.
So this finally stuff is really just propaganda from the Big Frost.
Big Frost is just coming at us here. Yeah, exactly. I'm absolutely an agent of Big Frost. I'm under their thumb and in their pocket for sure. No, listen, Icelander is. I'm not an Icelander stan. Okay, it's not that I'm just like just.
Tell me more.
Every time I do a draft or a sealed, I look for an excuse not to play it because I played it the first couple times and I really enjoyed it. I was like, I want to try something new, but yeah, you can't pass up really good blue ice cards when they appear in your pack 1 pick 1. You can't do it, and then everyone keeps passing me blue ice cards, blue ice cards, blue ice cards. So I'm like, you read the runes, you see the signals, you take it. Don't look at me like that. Sorry, I'm like,
Listen, I've spent a weekend with big shimmers, and now I have to deal with. Apparently, your name is just Blue Frost from now on.
blue Frost.
Yeah, because you said that's all Blue Frost every time. Blue Frost.
Blue ice
Frost.
is what I said.
Blue ice, whatever.
Big shimmers, blue
It's a
ice.
Powerade flavor.
No, yeah, I was like, blue
is
ice
what
sounds
it
like
is.
what you rub on your elbows after
No,
like
the
a
point here
tennis
is
elbow
that
or something.
He's just manufacturing it.
Okay.
All weekend long, it's been Icelander this, Icelander
That's
that.
not
Let
true
me
at
show you
all.
my waning moon. I don't care, Flake. Let's get to the game.
Finally. Thank you. All right. There is, it's going to be Dromai versus the best hero that's ever existed ever in life, Icelander. No, not a single little ounce of, what's the term? Bias. None of that. Okay. So Icelander with Waning Moon, Dromai with, activating your Ash Wings and letting him attack kind of thing.
All right, so this is going to be a really interesting matchup because we have full equipment essentially on both sides, but the most relevant piece perhaps is the boots for the Dromai player. That is a source of arcane barrier without the dragons. Another interesting piece to this matchup is that the Aether Ash Wings do give Dromai arcane barrier as well. That can become a nuisance for the Icelander if they can't deal with them. So that's going to be something to watch.
Very important here. Now, honestly, obviously, when it comes down to going first, going second, there's an advantage to a player that goes first sometimes in these particular matchups. However, for Icelander, there is no bigger advantage than an Icelander player going first because of the fact that Icelander's ability allows them to play out of the arsenal at instant speed on your opponent's turn, which thus turns on the Waning Moon, which is more powerful on your opponent's turn. Icelander is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the opponent's turn. And I believe that the player that's playing Dromai, that's Charles Dunn. Charles Dunn played yesterday, I believe finished in the top 4.
So I was waiting to point this out, but now it's like extra shiny on the camera, so we have to. If you're wondering what that yellow-looking card is, that's actually a foil custom Frostbite that was created just for this event by the Realm Games. They've got some artwork done by a local comic artist, and they have tokens for Frostbite, Spectral Shield, all the stuff that you would use at the set. So just want to say, hey, shout out to Realm Games for doing something fun like that, because they didn't just do custom tokens. It's literally foil, and they look great in person.
Absolutely. So the Icelander player here, we'll try to get names. I know that's Charles Dunn on the right playing Dromai, but again, you're going to see that Icelander player peeking at the arsenal a lot, because if that's a blue card and if it's an action, a non-attack action, you'll be able to bust that out, which again, lots of peeking there. When's the right time for this? Is that Thamai in Marvel form?
That is, in fact, the MCU version of Thamai.
Oh, it is absolutely brutal, Charmer. This is what we were talking about in the previous match. There are certain dragons that just absolutely pump the brakes on your strategy. That is Dalen Mack just sacking the quarterback hardcore.
All right, so this is obviously a play from Arsenal, and you have to assume that this is being done in response to the dragon, so before it resolves. And it looks like this is going to be the Polar with a fuse. just to get some damage in. I believe if the damage goes through, it will also create a frostbite token because of the fuse as well. But this has to kind of be done before that dragon resolves. So again, this is a polar cap with a fuse in response to the dragon, because after this, that dragon becomes enemy number 1.
No, definitely. And this early on in the game, you have to address that dragon. There's no other question about it. That dragon needs to be just, taken out. You got to clip its wings. Otherwise, there's nothing you can do. A lot of the bread and butter for Iyslander strategy is to play on your opponent's turn. Your waning moon is better. You can create frostbites. It allows you to play defensively on certain turns and just get your damage in that way. But with that dragon there, kind of as a gatekeeper, it just shuts off a lot of what Iyslander can do.
And this is one of those interesting situations where sometimes frostbite backfires, because now, in order to attack with the dragon, they have to pay for the frostbite, and they did so with a red pitch, so they actually get Ash because of the Dromai hero ability. So dragon comes in and connects, both players now at 15, and Iyslander is going to be looking for answers.
Much like, think about it this way, frostbites are auras, and it's like when you play with Prism and an aura busts with Merciful Retribution on the table, it's detrimental in certain cases. But in this case, part of the team strategy, Charmer, is that players are locked into their seat. You're either A, you're B, or you're C. So you can see they're wearing wristbands. In this case, they're like neon green style wristbands. You have to play against the same color wristband every time. There's strategy involved in this. Where do you put the Iyslander? Because Iyslander against FaB typically sometimes is favored for Iyslander. Iyslander against Dromai can be very problematic with the amount of arcane damage. In this case, the Iyslander player not only got the unfavorable matchup, but faced off against not just the Thamai, but a Marvel full art Thamai.
So what we're going to be watching for now is how Iyslander tries to reestablish control, because we see that the Thamai was finally dealt with, and you have a window of opportunity, right? You've got something back in your arsenal again. You've cleaned up dragons for now. The opponent only has the one Ash. Again, Ash is really important because with the Arcane Barrier on the Ash Wings, cards like Rake the Embers can really pop off later. And if you don't have something like Singe, for example, to clean them up, then it could be a bit of a headache. This is going to be, I think, a lot of just like back and forth vying for position on the board, because Dromai not only wants to use the dragons offensively, but I think more so than other matchups really relies on them defensively as well, because in a matchup against FaB, for example, you play the dragons, FaB attacks them, and they go away, so you essentially block damage. But because it's Arcane Barrier with those Ash Wings, they just hang out forever. They're so hard to deal with.
Yeah, Singe is a great answer to kill the Ashwings. Singe is basically your ultimate sideboard card. There's another dragon.
This is a Necria, and so I was just saying we have to pay attention to the Ash count. This is a 4/7, and whenever it deals damage or takes damage, it will get a -1 counter on the health, but it also creates an Ash token. So this thing essentially shows up, and it just starts spewing Ash. And if you had anything that could pop Phantasm, now would be the ideal time so that you didn't have to worry about those extra Ash tokens.
Probably.
Oh, you do! The brother! So
Massive.
What a play.
Huge timing. And again, Wizards will rarely have attack actions. They're really going to be loading up on non-attack actions, ice, those types of just arcane damage like that ice bolt, like you see right there. Rarely are they going to pack that in, but that's such a smart play to give the Iyslander the opportunity that when these unfavorable matchups occur, you have an answer like that, because that would have been a devastating blow. After Thamai, you have to deal with Necria, and now you have that Brothers in Arms just to stop it. Great timing on that play.
What a fantastic exchange to open this game. We have the Nightmare Thamai, and then the answer. Then we have the Nightmare Necria, and then the answer. If you are done right now, and you're on your Dromai game plan, and you're like, okay, I've started with Thamai and Necria, and they've both been answered, like, what do I got to do to establish some board here? Because I'm doing everything you're supposed to do. This is a textbook opening, and I can't get any of them to stick.
Yeah, it's difficult. And if you're Charles Dunn, the game kind of feels so much different than it did 5 or 10 minutes ago, where you open with the Thamai, you follow up with Necria, but man, did that Iyslander player have the timely responses, which are so important. You have to wonder what else is in there that Charles can do. Now, it's not just about this matchup is usually favored towards the Dromai player anyways because of the Ashwings being able to arcane barrier a lot of the damage. But ultimately, at the same time, a good Iyslander player will find those margins, will be able to do it. But part of it is also the deck building. I've played Iyslander with 11 to 12 blues, felt bad, and then I've had the ideal situations of playing with 15 blues. Felt better, but the second that you are unable to place a blue in your arsenal, things kind of fall apart. It is a house of cards. You need to make sure that everything is carefully planned, but that second that you do not have that blue non-attack action to jam in the arsenal, Iyslander starts to falter. That's where she trips up.
All right, so just a quick recap there. At the end of Charles' turn, we saw Waning Moon get activated off of the robe as well, so that's why that is flipped over. And then on the actual Iyslander turn, we had another just kind of straight shot, and wow.
Come on.
Cannot believe my eyes. Another Thamai coming down.
So worth noting, again, Thamai's ability means that the Iyslander player cannot play cards or abilities on their turn. So you might be wondering, well, why can Iyslander do it if Thamai's on the table? Thamai has not resolved. Thamai is on the stack. In response to that, the Iyslander player will start, shooting damage. But you might think in that case, well, okay, I'll just shoot damage at the Thamai. But you can't because it isn't on the board yet. So the Iyslander player now needs to have arcane damage to throw at the Thamai on their turn. So this might open up situations where if you need to hold those cards just to stay relevant and just to give yourself a chance in this game, this can be an opportunity for Charles to start swinging for damage.
All right, so we see some, again, damage come in. This is at the instant speed. This was fused, so there was a pitch paid to avoid discarding a card. Now Thamai officially resolves here. And as you said, we're going to have to, if you're the Iyslander player, find an answer. Another brother.
Huge.
Another Phantasm Pop. It's so funny because I was just about to say, there are non-arcane damage. You said you have to come up with 4 arcane. I was going to say, well, there are things like Scar for Scar that you traditionally run in Iyslander, and there are the Phantasm Poppers. That's 2 now we've seen. What an unreal start for both players.
Oh, man, when you're building this deck and you are Charles, you're in your mind, you're like, just match me up against the Iyslander. Just put me up against the Iyslander. I don't want to say it's a free win, but it is definitely, the field is sort of tilted in your favor. And, again, big kudos to the Iyslander player and the deck building team and the strategy of saying, if you do come up against the Dromai, you're going to need ways to deal with these dragons efficiently, especially if they find a Thamai or 2. So giving the Iyslander player the 6 attack powered cards to pop those dragons is clutch. It gives Iyslander not just a fighting chance, but a strong opportunity here to continue to just lay waste. There's another dragon.
Yep. This is going to be, I believe, a Rake the Embers. Just to recap what happened on the actual Iyslander turn, they did activate the Glacial Horns, the headpiece. That is why you see the die on the arsenal, because that is frozen. If there was an ally, it could have frozen that as well. And then after the helmet activation, they just arsenaled and passed. But that was a red Rake the Embers, so now we see those 3 Ashwings pop out. That brings the arcane barrier up to 4 for the Dromai player. And this is what I was talking about. Once you get to this stage, the Iyslander has to start theoretically cleaning these up, because otherwise you'll just never get the damage to go to the actual player.
Certainly. And, a Singe is basically the correct answer to this one. And we've seen just the deck building importance. If you've pulled any Singes, they are in this matchup 100%. Now, you can't play them. You could play a blue Singe out of Arsenal, potentially, but blue Singe will only potentially clean up 2 of the Ashwings, which is fine. Keep in mind that if you do kill that Ashwing that's attacking, you will shut off the go again. So there's a possibility here where that Aether Hail, I believe, Aether Hail might just shoot that dragon at instant speed, meaning that the go again is lost, the combat chain is closed. Yeah, he is pointing at it. He's saying, no, goodbye. That blue Aether Hail deals 2 damage. It should also give a Frostbite, if I'm not mistaken.
No, this one should deal 1.
Is the Aether Hail blue...
no, you are correct. The blue Aether Hail deals 2. Frosting deals 1. Aether Hail deals 2.
Hey,
Ice Bolt deals 3.
You're the one who said I was the big stan for
that's
that
right.
Yeah,
but
so.
I also am just really used to you being wrong all the time.
Okay.
In this case, you were correct.
Thank you.
I'm here
Mark
to
it
make
on
you
your
look
calendar,
good.
ladies and gentlemen. Twitch chat, that's 1 for Flake, 963 for Charmer, 0 for Tannen.
All right. This, again, trying to close the chain. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much you can do to stop this because all of the ward effects, the quell effects, even the miter, they all very specifically say prevent damage to the hero. So direct damage to the dragons can't be saved. It also, because it was an ice card played during your opponent's turn, triggers the Icelander hero ability, so we see that Frostbite donated as well. Icelander is very generous. She likes to give you gifts over and over again on your own turn.
Another Aether Ashwing coming through. Now, I was under the impression that if you did kill it, the go again would essentially go away because that instant speed before the attack happens. But I believe I'm incorrect on that. Could be wrong. Nonetheless, the attack pattern continues. Icelander does have a healthy life total over here, and Icelander already begins at a deficit at 18. That's why you're mentioning Scar for Scar, very popular pick for Icelander because of the fact that you're already starting with an online Scar for Scar. So red Scar for Scar, already a very attractive pack 1, pick 1, but any Scar for Scars, frankly, for Icelander are typically, attractive picks.
Yeah, the real potential in Scar for Scar is the fact that it's 0, and if you can get it with the go again, you can use it to clean up the dragons or even just get free damage before you play your action, activate your weapon, etc., etc. And so here we see a block on what I believe is the red version. So I think that's a 5 with go again. It's the one that if it breaks should create an ash as well. And now we see another ash created.
Those are Ashwings. They are nasty. And again, an Icelander without an arsenal is much. It's like a very neutered approach to how you can have any kind of potency in terms of attacking your opponent. But we're going to fuse that attack. It's a 0 cost attack that is going to do, I believe, 3 arcane damage. Fusing, if it does hit, if I'm not mistaken, that will create a Frostbite token. I'm going to double check on that again. Lots of new cards. Lots of game text as well. I think that was Aether Ice. No, that wasn't Aether Ice Vein. I'm sorry.
Ice Vein is the one that discards. It should be Ice Bind.
That was Ice Bind. So if it does deal damage, it basically freezes the card in the arsenal. And again, that's a very, very potent attack as well. I mean, it's basically like just shutting out a card that your opponent really wants to hang on to. So if you can just shut out that card, that usually is good to save you some health, save you some damage. So fusing those cards is very important.
And here we see a block coming in. That was a brain freeze, but let's be honest, that is usually just the blue pitch block in these decks. Sometimes you can use it in a pinch to activate your weapon if you play it from Arsenal, but this is a great card to throw away if you're trying to prevent some damage. And then because that was a red card that was played, again, that was an attack with Go Again, but because it was red, all of these dragons now have Go Again turned on as well. So we're going to see each of these Aether Ashwings coming in for the pokes.
So that's a blue Ice Bolt, 2 damage. It does create a Frostbite, but he's going to, again, go ahead and, start. I believe he's targeting the Ashwing, and I think that this is a valid approach.
You know what? I think you are correct as far as it turning off the Go Again, but what we had missed was that they activated their boots before. You see the boots are flipped over.
Right,
the stilettos
right.
are the thing that give you the action point. So your assessment earlier, I hate to admit it, was correct. It does normally stop it.
Twitch, that's Flake 2.
But the boots were activated. The reason I want to highlight that, though, and that's such a big deal, is because those boots are a natural source of arcane barrier, even without the Aether Ashwings. And so choosing at that moment to kind of forgo that for the rest of the match.
That's a gambit, and I'm not sure if that's important. Not important. I don't know if that's...
It's very important one way or the other.
You know what I mean? I don't know if that's the correct approach, because if you're at a position where the Icelander player was at like at like 1, 2, or 3 health, giving up the arcane barrier in order to maintain pressure is usually the right approach. But the Icelander player still has plenty of life to play with here. So giving up just permanent arcane barrier against a wizard, that's not a fan of that. But we're going to see Charles again made it to the top 4 yesterday at the 10K. He knows what he's doing, and you got to trust him here.
A lot of options here. We have a 4-card hand with an arsenal for our Dromai player. On the other side of the table, we also have the arsenal with cards available. So this is in this matchup where the fireworks really start to go, because one player is going to want to do a bunch of things. The other wants to slow them down, whether that is popping a dragon, whether that is donating those frostbites, et cetera, et cetera. And so this, again, is one of the options that will create an Aether Ashwing. It will also give it an attack buff, the one that was just created. That was the red version. That die represents the 4 total attack because it's the +3. And so this, because it was a red card, turns on the go again for all of the dragons. We'll have to see whether or not the attacking dragon gets targeted.
Right now, what you need, I mean, we've been talking about how this match has been just back and forth. You know, Charles presents this massive bomb, this massive threat. It has been answered by Icelander every single time, be it with, popping Phantasm, et cetera, burning down the dragons with arcane damage. What Icelander needs now is to pick up Singe. It's a very important card for the wizard player to play against multiple smaller health targets like those Aether Ashwings. What Singe does, it's a wizard action that deals 1 arcane damage to target hero, but based on the color scheme, the red Singe will allow you to target up to 3 allies as well with 1 damage. It's kind of like a little point and click delete on all of those little Ashwings. And if you do not have that ability, Singe is bad against against in the mirror. It's bad against Phi. It is great against Dromai, and I think out of 12 packs, you got to think that there's 1 floating around in there at least.
All right, so 2 dragons have connected. So this is a little bit interesting. Charles Dunn decided to attack with the ones that only have 1 attack first, and they were successfully going through, and then when they attacked with the one that was 4, that got targeted, but because of the potential for interrupting the combat chain, I think you could have just targeted the first one and then prevented even the little pokes, but a little bit of a sneak through there. Heads up play by Charles to say, hey, sometimes you just let your opponent try to make a mistake. And, oh, this is cheeky.
Yeah, Oasis Respite is a really great card. Again, having an ability to not just block the damage, but also potentially regain a health. The difference here is that with the health totals all squared away, they're all even Steven, there's going to be no health, it's just a block. And that's okay, that's fine. And when you do not have Arcane Barrier necessarily, having an outlet like Oasis Respite, which prevents damage, whichever way it is, arcane, physical, it's a nice card to have. It's a good answer to bigger arcane damage attacks.
The other nice thing there was, because of the red pitch, you created another ash. The more ash you can continue to generate as the Dromai and then again create these Ashwings, the better off you are, because as this game goes longer, if we don't go to time, one of the potential stories here is the fatigue game plan. Because when Icelander is spending cards to target Ashwings and you are recreating Ashwings, but if you can do so at, more Ashwings per card, eventually you will run the Icelander out of cards, right? It's just a numbers game. However, if you can get the Ashwings low enough where the Arcane Barrier is a little less relevant, then you can start threatening lethal as the Icelander. And so there's that balance that comes into play. But these are only 30-card decks in the sealed environment, and so the fatigue thing starts to matter relatively quickly.
What I'm surprised about here is that, when you're playing Icelander, you're trying to push damage on your opponent's turn. We haven't seen much of Waning Moon.
All right, this is a Burn Them All. This is a Majestic from this set. This is the one that when a dragon attacks once per turn, it will deal 1 arcane damage as well. And then to keep it around, you have to banish cards from your discard pile. I believe it has to be red cards specifically. For the number of raise counters, I believe it is. So this is just a nice source of extra damage. It's 1 arcane per turn when you attack with a dragon, but also it's a red card with go again, so that means that your dragons now are online. They all have go again for the turn, and it's very nice for this because even if your dragon gets popped when it attacks, the arcane trigger from Burn Them All still needs to be dealt with.
Burn them all is such a good card. It's an aura. It'll stay on the board. It'll constantly be pressure on against the Icelander player. The difference here is that, it's banish 1 red on turn 1 on the first turn, banish 2, then 3. So you're going to need 6 red cards in your graveyard to have it around for 3 turns. And again, I'm not sure how many more turns this will go, but you'll need 10 reds to have it on a 4th turn, which seems a little bit much.
Well, that's to keep it through that 4th turn, though. So you get a turn, you play it, and then it's 1 red card to get a 2nd turn, 2 additional after that to get the 3rd. So you can get through 4 and that 4 arcane damage when you're at 8. Very relevant. So like I said, you're gonna have to have some sort of answer here if you're Icelander for that. Now that could just be pitch. We do see slippers, for example, for the quell. We've also got the gloves there.
So he has Singe in his hand right now. I don't know what color, but I believe he has Singe in his hand. That's got to be Singe.
It does look like it, yeah.
So that is massive. The problem is that he cannot play it because it's not his turn. And Wizards typically have that luxury of being able to play it instant speed on your opponent's turn, but only out of the arsenal and only if it's blue. So Icelander has to wait till her turn in order to play Singe. Singe costs 1. So this turn, if you want to even have it, I don't say have a chance, but there's a potential here where there's no blocks. And the reason why I say that is because you'll need a card to pitch for Singe, you'll need to play the Singe, and then Icelander wants to play the card in the arsenal. This is where Icelander gets really tricky to play because blocking becomes difficult. You're thinking, well, you got 3 cards, you only want to play Singe, so why not just throw the block out here? Icelander needs an arsenal to be potent, to be relevant.
All right, so the end of this chain, this came from the Dromai Arsenal. This is a Dust Up. It looks like a red one, so it should be an attack for 4. And then if it connects, you make another dragon. You make another Ashwing from your Ash. And the big deal here is that it is an attack for 4, and the Icelander is already down to 5, getting down to 1 with that Burn Them All.
I just want to I just want
dangerous.
to interject here because this is part of the team format. What he's doing right now is you're allowed to consult with your teammates, whoever's adjacent to you. So right now, the Icelander player is speaking to the teammate with this scenario. And I think what he's saying is like, look, I'm at 5. I need to pitch for Singe to kill these Ashwings, and I need to preserve an arsenal. But am I in danger here? How close to the edge am I? So he's showing the cards, showing the situation. This is part of the team dynamic, Charmer.
I think another thing that's very relevant here is what color that Singe is. Because this Dust Up on hit threatens to create another dragon. So if your Singe is only a blue or a yellow and you were planning on killing these 2, this Dust Up connecting creates a 3rd that you still won't be able to deal with, and the moment they attack, that Burn Them All will trigger next turn. So this is a really important point as far as like breakpoints go.
Is he looking to block with the Singe, could it be?
I think he might be, because he's realizing if I can't use it to clean up all the dragons anyway.
There's a situation here perhaps where you block with the Singe, you can perhaps, maybe you're pitching for a lot of damage here. Maybe you've got a 0-cost arcane attack, and then you can pocket a card in the arsenal so that when Charles presents his next attack, you play the other card out of the arsenal and then pitch for Waning Moon for lethal. That is possibly a way to do this. Oh, never mind. That's a popper right there.
Unfortunately, this is just a block because this is not a Phantasm attack. So what's happening is he's pitching the Singe to then make the Brother-in-Arms block for 4.
Okay.
So it blocks for 2, but it has that cool ability where you can also pay to increase the block. Ultimately, he wanted to prevent that additional Ashwing from being created. That's why I said the Dust Up was so important, because it's a 4 attack, so it's an awkward breakpoint, and it threatened to make a 3rd dragon. So if that was a blue or a yellow Singe, it wasn't going to clear them all anyway.
Right.
And so what would have been a great turn ended up being very awkward because of that Dust Up.
I really, really like how this is what I'm talking about when I love team formats, is you're consulting with your teammates. When we played the Blitz team format in Las Vegas, I was on a team with Gigi Doa and Rick from BCW. We had a great dynamic. It was great. I was in the middle. It was so much fun to just kind of look to your left, look to your right, consult, have these kinds of discussions because they matter and they're important. And sometimes your opponent, your teammate has a perspective, has an experience, or has something in their back pocket that they can kind of help you out with to see it from a different angle.
All right, so the Icelander turn, because they just had the 1 card, it was Arsenal, draw up. We're back to Dromai being in the driver's seat here, and we're going to kick things off with this attack with Go Again. 1 cost, so we have the 2 floating as well. Still 3 cards in hand, and this is a great way to start because you don't want to lead off with the dragons, even though you have that burn them all trigger. You don't want them to die, ruin your combat chain. So if you have these attacks with Go Again, you can jam them almost like a ninja, almost like a Fi, and then end with the dragons as well. And so here, I believe this is the Cold Snap coming from Arsenal so that you can donate the Frostbite, try to slow things down.
True story, when I used to play World of Warcraft for 6 months, like several years ago, my character was an ice wizard named Cold Spark.
And I love how you were trying to convince me that you're not part of, like, Big Ice, you know?
Meanwhile, and whenever we'd log in, so we'd all get into Discord, and when it was time to go, like, and our buddies would get together, I would just get into Discord, and I wouldn't say hello. I would go, Cold Spark, and then be like, well, Flake's here, and then we'd go and play. But yeah, Cold Snap is a card again. I think what the Icelander player is trying to do here is to get Charles to a position where he'll have to pitch cards perhaps to take advantage of Arcane Barrier, maybe get to a position where, you know, you Waning Moon, get down to 5, get down to 4, 4 or 5, whatever, and then on Charles's turn, Icelander could then play from Arsenal, swing for Waning Moon, and maybe get there. So
all right,
6 is not the magic number, though.
Real quick, just to kind of cover what happened there. I know that's a Frostbite token, but it's on the dragon because Cold Snap has this ability where you can freeze an ally, and that is what occurred there. So that's just kind of signifying that the Ashwing was frozen. And then now we have a Rake the Embers. So this is going to create 3 more Ashwings. This is a nightmare for the Icelander because they've already played the card from Arsenal. They've already used the Waning Moon. They won't be able to kill these dragons to interrupt the combat chain. And so this is going to be kind of like the movie Birds, but instead with ashen dragons. They're going to be swooping in one by one, poking along the way.
Is that a movie about Larry Bird?
It is,
like
actually.
In his family?
It is about a swarm of Larry Birds.
No, I thought it was just like, like it was a docu-series about his life and times and his family. I could be wrong, but anyways. The Birds, Larry and Mrs.
I think
Larry.
it's fair to say this broadcast has went to the Birds, but this is, again, a lot of damage being threatened by the Ashwings. Again, also a nightmare for the Icelander because they provide Arcane Barrier. There's also this Burn Them All trigger that you have to assess. I think that was already resolved with the first one because there was some floating pitch as well.
Man, I really love Uprising. Uprising Limited might be some. I used to say that like Tales of Aria is my favorite set. We haven't really dug into Uprising yet, but I'm telling you, like Uprising Limited, you can definitely agree, Charmer, that we can just not get enough of this.
All right, so we see that the slippers were activated with the floating pitch for the Quell.
Again,
so that prevented that damage. Again, this is a really important turn for the Icelander. You're already down to 5. You don't have many cards. Even if you survive this, so this is why it's so important. Even if you survive this round, if you're unable to Arsenal, then the Dromai player, you basically, you draw your 4 cards, but you have nothing you can do on their turn. They'll draw up, and all they need is 1 red to activate all these dragons again. So if you're Icelander, it's not just about surviving. You have to survive and have a card to Arsenal to actually play the game.
It's incredible how the meta or the opinions of the meta have evolved, where at the beginning it's like Fi is far and beyond the most powerful. Then people started figuring out Icelander a bit. Then it was like Icelander with a good pool, unbeatable. Suddenly people are realizing that Icelander without an arsenal is rather punchless. It kind of falls apart. The wheels come off when Icelander eventually no longer has any life total as a resource. Doesn't have that ability to absorb damage in order to preserve arsenal, to preserve those big hands.
That is time on the round.
All right, so
active player.
The important things to note right now, Icelander used the Quell on the boots to stop all of the damage, had no arsenal, drew back up to 4 cards. Dromai started the turn. I think I just heard a time called, so this has the potential to be like one of the last turns. But again, no arsenal for the Icelander, down to 5, and we have a number of Aether Ashwings, but now we're seeing a Chromai. This is insult to injury because when this one attacks, it's going to trigger Burn Them All. We see that happening. But the action point here as well from Chromai means even if you stop one dragon, even if you magically had something in hand that did it, you got that extra action point to continue the chain. Chromai Invoke is a red card, so all your dragons have go again. I mean, you hit everything you needed at exactly the turn you needed it here for Dunn.
Yeah, Charles Dunn is, again, this is fascinating, you know, like dealing a little bit of damage here and there, taking some of the blocks, and yeah, it's just tough. Again, time in the round is something to consider. This is a matchup that is very grindy. If both players have strong pools, it will oftentimes go to time because the amount of, again, Arcane Barrier, Ash Wings, chip damage, blocking, you know, the amount of complexity, whoa.
So what happened here, they were kind of speeding through it. The activation of the Quell on the gloves was dealing with the dragons as they were coming one by one, but then at the very end, the last card played was an attack with Go Again that I believe was going for lethal there. So you saw the handshake and just very, very well done. I know that we've had now 2 games go to time, but I feel like that one, even though it was the same length of time, was far more of a marathon because of the opening. We saw Thamai, we saw Necria, we saw another Thamai, we saw multiple Phantasm pops. It was just like, pose a threat, get answered, pose a threat, get answered.
Yeah.
What a game.
Very reminiscent of yesterday in the finals, actually, where basically every turn that was supposed to be the pop-off turn with Channel Mount Heroic was stuffed by Arclight Sentinel. Every single major threatening, you know, scenario had a solution, and in this case, the Icelander player being able to just pop those terrorizing dragons, especially the 4/7, where it took those are dragons that take investment in terms of killing them. You can't just kill them because their health regains at the end of the turn. You got to do the damage in one spot, and it's impossible to do that because there's nothing that deals 7 arcane damage. You have the Waning Moon, but the Waning Moon only targets the hero. So very, very well played by both players. Excellent deck building as well. That needs to go into effect because those cards, those 6s, are so valuable across all 3 of your teammates, but giving them the Icelander player to give them a fighting shot against a very almost, I don't want to say unwinnable scenario, but balancing, turning a 75-25 into a 50-50 is that's where the deck building and the team aspect really kicks in.
Yeah, the other really fun thing about those being included with Icelander is they're just giant generic attacks. And so when you're game planning against Icelander, you know you have to prepare for the arcane damage, but you can throw somebody a curveball when you're just like, oh, by the way, I attack for 6 physical on my turn.
Oh, that's happened. I mean, just coming in with like a critical strike against your opponent who's not aware of it or not prepared for it, you're like, oh, okay. You know, they're just like, now I have to deal with this garbage. I can't just, you know, effectively block it out, save cards. I have to give you cards to block this out. That's another tough one as well. So, you know, various different ways to play it. Limited format, again, my favorite format to play Flesh and Blood, and in this case, you can see it just why. Team just adds extra layers to it, and very well played by both players here.
Yeah, phenomenal. I really wish we knew how the whole team was performing. I'm going to be honest because I want to know who really gets the match victory, because we saw a victory by Charles Dunn on the screen, but we don't know how the teammates did.
Right. So we want to also direct you to realmgamingnetwork.com because there's a lot of information there about yesterday's tournament, about today's tournament. So go check out realmgamingnetwork.com. Go check that out as well. We will be taking a short break. Pairings are going up. We'll get the next setup on the screen, and we'll get you another great matchup. So don't go too far. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Round number 3 is just underway. You just heard it. You may begin, and so will the players that we have ready for you right now. Now, this team that we have has somebody like Dagon White, who is a very good player, rocking 7 dragons. Unfortunately, due to the positioning of the teams and the strategy involved with that, we will not be seeing a 7-dragon Dromai. What we will be seeing is another unique matchup.
Yeah, turns out Flake gets his wish yet again. We're going to see Icelander. It's just what happens when you're a proponent of Big Frost or Big Ice or whatever it is your lobby is called. But it's going to be Icelander taking on FaB. This is a really interesting matchup because obviously FaB wants to go very, very wide, and Icelander wants to slow you down with the Frost effects. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
This is going to be a great matchup again. The difference here is the fact that there's very little arcane barrier. There's a lot of little chip damage. So Whereas FaB is going to try their best to just completely go ham, go balls to the walls, full force, full throttle to try to bring that Icelander down. The Icelander is going to have a lot of, frost effects, sort of slow down effects, dropping a lot of frost effects on your opponent's turn. You're going to see a lot of favoring those ice cards into the arsenal to play them at the opportune time so that your opponent, the FaB, will not be able to, very efficiently play those cards. And a lot of those reds, Charmer, are going to be 0 cost or 1 cost. And if you're loading up your deck with a lot of those red cards, the sideboarding, you're going to be having to put in more blue cards to just, pay for those frostbites, in which case it's a less potent attack.
There is also another potential scenario that we're going to have to watch out for in this matchup. Again, we're going to be loading into the game in just a moment. That's what I call the race. Sometimes the Icelander says, you know what? I've got my 5 arcane damage in hand and my moon activation, and then I can also arsenal, Ice Bolt or something, and then do 6 on my opponent's turn as well. So if I can start by dealing 14, well, then maybe I can just race the FaB. I have had in drafts and in sealeds, these Icelander FaB matchups not go the kind of grindy route, but be over in 2 turns because both players just unload the arcane damage hard for FaB to block if they wanted to. Then FaB turns around with their 4-card hand and cracks back. We could see this be, again, drawn out to time like our previous 2, or this could be over in a blink.
Definitely. And the Ninja Boots, having Arcane Barrier, very important. Those are going to stick around essentially the whole game, as well as a lot of Quell. So we're taking you to the game right now, and the Icelander players' first order of business here is dealing with, Quell, Arcane Barrier, Helios Miter as well. There's a lot of preventative effects, but they do cost, and they're not evergreen. They're not going to stick on the board forever, other than the Time Skipper boots. So Icelander's got some work to do. But again, part of the battle here is if the Icelander is the player to act first, which it seems like they're doing, this is going to be big. Is that Jordan Peterson? Is that Logan Peterson? I believe that's Logan Peterson.
It's funny. I was just writing you a note.
Yeah.
To say, hey, is that who I think it is? But we appear to have identified it. So this is going to be interesting matchup because we've had the luxury of playing in a few side events this weekend with people like Dagan that we mentioned with the Dromai, which, by the way, I know it's not on screen, but that's a scary thought because I seen Dagan last night pilot 2 Dromai limited decks to near perfection, and the fact that he got like a 7-dragon deck is super scary. But also, this is somebody who I know for a fact is very comfortable on Icelander, piloted it a lot at our side events this weekend, and so we're going to see I think beautiful navigation from an Icelander player, and that's very important. The sequencing matters, the timing matters. Right out of the gate here on turn 0, we have some damage coming in. This is, again, a polar cap. I don't...
looks yellow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't see for sure if it's yellow, but it looks yellow to me. But the important piece here is you're going first, right? You want that turn 0 if you're the Icelander because you want an arsenal, but also you don't want to take the incidental damage. I've been on the other side where if you're the FaB player and you go first against Icelander, not only do they not get the arsenal, but if you can get chip damage in because they already started 18 and then you get them to go lower, it can snowball in your favor. So this is a really big deal.
Definitely a big deal. Also, Icelander going first has the advantage of just being able to, you sneak the damage through. The Helios Miter is usually best used against Icelander on turn 1 because you recur a lot of those cards. You draw them up at the end of the turn. So pitching away a lot of those blues, which FaB is going to have to shove into the deck in order to properly defend against the Arcane. Usage of Helios Miter on turn 0 effectively is typically the right move all the time.
All right, so here we see a hail firing off. So it's going to donate that Frostbite token because it's an ice card played during your opponent's turn. It's going to threaten the 2 arcane damage as well. It looks like it was a red pitch, though, so a little less than ideal. Traditionally, what I really love about Aether Hail in particular is if you have a blue pitch, you can pay for the hail and then also have the 2 left over for the waning moon. So here, because that was a red pitch, if you want to commit to that 3 damage from your weapon, it'll have to cost you another card. But yeah. Aether Hail is a great card having in that arsenal.
No, I mean, Aether Hail, it's very efficient in terms of how much work you can do with 1 blue pitch. And in this case, pitching the red frosting Frosting is a zero cost 3 arcane damage, but it's an ice card as well. So much like Aether Dart's a 3 attack for 3 arcane for 0, but this one's an ice card. So this is just a superior version to the standard wizard attack. But in this case, Logan envisions his life total much like a resource. It's like a clock in itself. You don't pay much attention to it until it matters because you want to make sure that you maximize Icelander's ability on your opponent's turn. Waning Moon is just 50% better when it's your opponent's turn, and being able to pair up an Aether Hail and a Waning Moon is 5 arcane and a Frostbite, and that's important. That's huge. That Frostbite against a deck that runs a lot of reds and that typically things are cost 0, that can be a hindering effect.
So one of the things that we have to note here is that we saw the one player play a Scar for Scar, then pick it back up. I think they're trying to think about sequencing, now considering swinging with the sword. The first attack, the one that connected, I believe, is the one that provides Go Again to an attack, so that could be a way to give that Scar for Scar potentially the ability to go again, because right now you have a higher health total, so it wouldn't have naturally had it, but instead we're going to go with a different attack, try to extend the chain here, and now we see a reading because I believe this is a card that doesn't naturally have Go Again, but the Tide Flippers would be possible to extend it. Is that Breaking Point is what I'm seeing? It's normally a Rupture card, but I believe that's why they were eyeballing those Tide Flippers to see whether or not there was going to be any sort of Go Again.
We're having a look over here, and this is a matchup again. We just went from an Icelander at a disadvantage against Dromai to Icelander at a slight advantage against a
So I do think that was a Breaking Point. It's a card that is got a Rupture effect, but instead it was just played at the end. They didn't activate the Tide Flippers for Go Again because I think Breaking Point is actually above 2, and they couldn't anyway. Naturally, what happened there is you just kind of end your turn a little bit early because of the disruption. You get to arsenal a card. Perhaps they arsenaled that Scar for Scar because of the health total disparities, and now we're moving on. The play here, so this I believe is an Arctic Incarceration Red, just casually donating 3 Frostbites to the Fi, and that is horrific. Because that is a lot of pitch that you have to pay for in a deck where you traditionally just want to run like 1 blue into 3 attacks. But now that's an entire blue just for the Frostbites. And so you see 2 cards pitched just for this blue attack.
Yeah, and in cards that cost 0 for Icelander are so important. You want to maintain as many cards in hand as possible. Playing that out of Arsenal blue even, it creates 2 Frostbites for no cost, and it allows you to activate your Waning Moon. There's a blue Ice Bolt that's going to be 2 arcane damage, 1 floating off the blue pitch. That's not enough to activate Waning Moon, but it's enough to actually, it's your poking
damage. It still
damage.
donates another Frostbite, though, too. So
another Frostbite.
4 extra pitch that you're going to have paid, and if you are the Fi player here, you've got that 2 floating pitch. You were probably saying, okay, I swing the first time, then I can attack with my sword. But now, with that Frostbite, if you want to swing with your sword, it's going to cost you that last card in your hand. So this is a rough turn. This is like when you win the lottery and then suddenly you get taxed by the government for an exorbitant amount. These 4 Frostbites are equivalent to losing half of your lottery winnings.
You don't even have to go that far. It's when you work and get taxed. Winning the lottery is just,
You're used to that because you're Canadian, so you
I'm sorry, do you not have tax here?
I mean, we do, but
okay.
We just also don't get, like, healthcare or anything else.
All right, no problem. Well, it's a wide world out there, Trevor. So there's Frostbite happening again, and, Ice Bolt in Arsenal is a little bit awkward. Again, it does do damage. It does give Frostbite, but you have to pitch another card if you want to take advantage of Waning Moon. But there's the other, that was the follow-up here. The follow-up here is that if you do use your robe, you can get 1 extra resource if it's your opponent's turn. At instant speed, you can pop it. You crack the robes, you add an extra resource. Now, Logan has 2 floating, which means that Waning Moon is now, you can pay for it. He's just being patient with Waning Moon. You don't need to necessarily pop it in right away. It's 3 arcane damage that you can, as soon as the Fi player says, all right, move to Arsenal, pass priority, that's when Logan will probably go ahead and swing with the Waning Moon with those 2 resources.
Well, and also, if you don't know what is in your opponent's hand, them sitting on those resources could just represent like an Oasis Respite, for example, right? You don't need to commit to the waning moon right away, that gives your opponent information. So because it's an instant and you can do it after your opponent passes priority before the turn ends, there's no reason to give them that knowledge of, okay, yes, I'm just going to spend this on waning moon.
Yeah, having the one float does open up the possibility of Oasis Respite, absolutely. But you think that if Logan is activating that extra resource now, Oasis Respite costs 1. If that was the case, if that was what was in hand, there was no need to pop the robes, right? So I think this is just 100% telegraphed that that's the case. He's going to block this out. There's going to be the sash is going to create another resource. There's a red card on the board, so you get an additional resource, bringing it up to 2. There comes the Ember Blade, 3 more damage, and I think Logan's okay to take that. But hey, there's a Scar for a Scar coming out of Arsenal.
That is the Scar for Scar that got Arsenaled before, but because it's at the end, you don't care about the go again. You're just trying to generate pressure. The other reason that you might have not spent those floating resources is you could decide, hey, the 3 damage is nice, but I'm getting low right now. Maybe I spend it on Quell. I don't think that's going to be what the decision is here, but again, just leaving yourself that flexibility, because we know those slippers have already been activated once. You could just say, okay, I want to get 2 block out of it instead of 3 damage. It's one of those things that's a judgment call, but with your health being much lower right now and potentially going down to 2, it starts to look a lot more attractive than, say, just poking for 3.
So he's going to take it. So Logan's taking this down to 2. He's going to go ahead and swing with the Waning Moon, so that's going to bring the FaB player down to 7. 7 is doable, because if that card that Logan is holding on to here can deal damage, and Logan's able to block out the follow-up turn, keeping in mind that FaB does not have an arsenal, but if Logan is able to block out the follow-up turn, you just block out, and there are plenty of cards in Icelander's pool that can deal arcing damage for 0. So you just need to hang on to 1 and just hold on for dear life. But going down to 2 is a dangerous gambit when a hero like FaB has access to Phoenix Flames.
So this is going to be a cold snap, and it's going to donate a Frostbite. It's played from Arsenal, so it also allows them to draw a card. That's very relevant here.
Very, very relevant.
It also, because it costs 1, leaves that 2 floating for the Waning Moon. So this could be a situation where, just like you said, because you draw the extra card, it was played from Arsenal, you can block out, maybe save yourself 1 card to repocket, get the 3 in from the Moon, and then if your opponent's at 4, you're in striking distance where you can kill them in response to attacks declared, for example.
That's the beautiful part about the Wizard, is that when you're hunting for lethal, you have essentially 2 back-to-back goes to complete it. You have your turn to deal your lethal, and then on your opponent's turn, if you have that blue arsenal, you can go ahead and complete the package.
There is no opponent's turn. When you're playing Wizard, it's our turn, comrade.
Well, that's true with Kano. The problem is that there are caveats with Icelander. She needs the blue arsenal. That's why she's so complicated to commit to in draft, because if you commit to Icelander and suddenly the blue pool dries up, the worst feeling is when you've committed to Icelander, pack 3 goes around and you're sitting on 9 or 10 blues. That is absolutely not enough. Even 15 sometimes is not a sure thing.
Yeah. The good news is this is Team Sealed, and so with all those packs open, you get to pick the cream of the crop. You likely have a critical mass of blue. We know, as I said before, this is a player with a lot of experience on Icelander from side events this weekend. They know what they need to get, and some tough decisions being made here. This is a Flame Call Awakening coming from the FaB player, so that's a 3 go again, but you're at 2, so you have to, block this, continue to contribute cards. Being at 2 is also very, very relevant because of Phoenix Flame. We haven't seen a lot of it from the FaB player so far, but we do have a Heat Wave on the board, so even a single Phoenix Flame is enough to threaten lethal, and that's something that you're going to have to calculate, right? Even if you're saying, okay, my opponent has 1 card left, maybe that's a pitch for the sword. Well, that's a 3rd Draconic Chain Link, and then that Phoenix Flame comes in and threatens lethal. So a lot to consider here.
Very good point. Very good point. You mentioned Heatwave is one of your favorite, equipment pieces out of this entire set. You really, really like that piece, and now I see why. Getting down to 2, and you'll have that Phoenix Flame will constantly be buying a block, and that's massive.
And the best part is because the Heatwave activation is an instant, you don't have to commit it, right? You can send it for one and force your opponent to deal with it. It's like a Kodachi. I know you're a Ninja fan. It's like a Kodachi that could maybe threaten more than one, so your opponent has to respect it and commit to it more.
Oh, you know how how a Kodachi can threaten more than one?
Razor Reflex.
Damn right, the superior +3 ninja.
But
attack
you know
reaction.
how a Phoenix form can threaten more than one.
Rapid reflex. Yeah. I mean, so I
You know how else it can? Also Razor Reflex.
also razor reflex, exactly. Why is rapid reflex better than razor reflex? Well, because it could play like a razor reflex. Oh, you're right. Okay, gotcha. Logic checks out.
So this is a block for 3. And here comes a Phoenix with a block.
That's a tough give too, because that's a scar for a scar. That is online. That's a free attack. So I like this, bringing the your opponent down to 3. Now here's the deal: if Logan was able to hold on to a blue card, this could potentially be lethal. This could be, if that is a blue that deals, that deals 1 or 2 or whatnot, you're going to start buying cards out of the 5 player's hand with the Arcane Barrier, but you're also swinging with a Waning Moon. It's a very
I was just about
complex
to
thing.
say, the issue is that you've got the Tide Flippers, right? So it's got to be enough that you can deal with 2 being soaked, 1 from the moon, 1 from the initial. But here we instead just straight up have a scar for scar saying,
Lethal.
hey,
Deal with it.
give me a card. Or don't and just die. That's always on the table, right?
Or don't.
You can just say, you know what?
Everything's
I'm
a coin flip,
not-
Charmer.
Not going to block.
Everything happens or doesn't. Everything's a coin flip. But yeah, mentioning, I'm like, Logan giving up a block of a Scar for a Scar that was an online card. He must have like a blue wizard card or something. Nope. It is a red Scar for a Scar. A pack one, pick one if there ever was one. And this is the ideal situation to use it when it matters, when blocking this is important. So I think right now the 5 player is saying, man, if that was any color but red, that I would have just taken this and probably beaten the Icelander. But different story. Now I got to start giving you cards. And what does he have in hand? He's got a trade-in in hand.
Oh
no.
Scar for Scar, matching a Scar for Scar. I have not seen this many scars since I watched The Lion King.
There is one in that movie.
Yeah.
Like, I guess. Anyways.
There's either a scar or there isn't, all right? It's a coin flip.
You're right. Scar or a scar?
Yeah,
That's
sure.
Yeah, exactly. Just you know what? Get the F out. So now it's scar or a scar.
I love just frying your brain.
You are. You're absolutely frying your brain. We bring you quality content here on the stream. So.
All right, so I actually really like the way that this went. They started with a Lava Burst, which is normally a Rupture card. It's a 0-cost 2 that gets +3 with Rupture. But because of the Tide Flippers, they just start with the 2, and they can give it go again, and then that goes into the blade. And now this is a Mounting Anger. Now, if you're not familiar with what this card does, the on hit is that you can, I believe, banish a card and give it an attack bonus based on the number of Draconic Chain Links you have. But really, it's just saving this big attack for the end because it's going to be the most awkward to deal with after you've eaten cards. So we're going to see a 3 block and then an activation of the Quell because of that awkward breakpoint.
But hold on a second.
Now
you can, that's 3 Draconic Chain Links.
That's right.
You get Phi, and your favorite card, Heatwave, is going to win the game. But it won't because you have Quell.
Because you have Quell. But this is the beauty, right? You can still bring that Phoenix Flame back to your hand and then choose to arsenal it, encouraging you to have more cards in the future if they crack back. Yeah, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
Smart move.
Great exchange here. Your boots are gone, though. Right? You used them for the go again, so Arcane Barrier completely gone. However, the Icelander also has no hand, so it won't be able to arsenal and threaten any arcane damage. This is strictly, if you're the Icelander, you need Phi to whiff. You need them to have an awkward hand that you can block out and save 1 card, and then you're back in the game.
But any chain of events is going to be devastating. I mean, those are tough cards over here. Go again, blocking 3. All right, let's eat that one. What else you got?
Yeah, that was just
tough,
a
dude.
0-cost go-again opener just to get things started. And now you have to say, okay, what can I pitch? What can I do? If you have a blue pitch, I think this is pretty easy to navigate.
You
but
can Phoenix Flame here from Arsenal. That's perfectly viable as well. But maybe he's just holding on to it in case it becomes relevant later on. If you don't get through this time, we'll see. But all he needs to do is chain together 4 attacks, and he gets another go at it. Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, this is unfortunately going to be the end because as long as this is not a red card, you have at least enough to pitch for the sword.
Yeah,
there
this
you
is
go.
tough. So that's going to come in for 3 block, and there comes the Phoenix Flame, and
with
it's
the
all
heat
over.
wave. Wow, what a game. What a game.
Again, the whole school of thought surrounding the limited meta for Uprising started with FaB is the strongest, it's not even close. Leaning towards Icelander with a good pool, unbeatable. Suddenly Dromai has sort of, come into the picture if you have a decent pool and just good pilots on that deck as well. It has just been shifting. It's in constant flux. The favoring of Icelander as being the strongest in, all things equal, a good Icelander pool will beat everybody is not, it seems like people are shifting away from that now. Again, the conversation is constantly in flux.
I think it's just people getting more comfortable with each hero. For example, when I first picked up Uprising, Dromai felt awkward to me because I didn't know how to pilot it, right? It was an illusionist, but it was kind of like a brand new way to play it. It felt weird, like how do I make sure I'm doing the pitch and the creations? But as players are getting more time with the new set, I think that they are coming to conclusions about the best ways to pilot it, and now suddenly they all feel balanced. And though there is one thing I want to say, I've said it multiple times off camera this weekend during the side events and so forth, I want to give a shout out to Legend Story Studios and their balance team, because Icelander having 18 health is what makes this a balanced set. The number of times I've said, hey, if I just had 2 more health on Icelander, I feel like I could almost never lose with her. But as we see there, when you come down to the wire, it's neck and neck, and that 2 health, very relevant. It happens over and over and over again with Icelander. So shout out to them for realizing, hey, this probably needs just a little bit of a nudge.
Oh, and they do a good job. Again, there's always going to be erratas, there's always going to be changes, but this format seemed to be leaning one way. But as people start figuring things out, like you mentioned, as people become more comfortable with the heroes and become more familiar with the cards, building decks and figuring out what works, what doesn't, has essentially kind of, again, equalized, balanced, everything's in flux, and here we are again. That we are at the Realm Gaming Network Team Sealed Uprising event. Flake, Charmer, we've got round 4 around the corner. Do not go too far. We will be back shortly. For Team Sealed here at the Realm Gaming Network tournament, Uprising is the flavor, and I'm here with my teammate Charmer.
I'm so glad that I get to be here with you in this nice loving embrace, because we've got a great matchup for you. It's on deck, and it is, big shocker, Icelander versus Icelander. That's right. Flake and his big ice agenda is going to get to see some more frosty action.
Absolutely. Yeah, the ice lobby has been successful. We're going to have an Icelander versus Icelander match. The other option was 5 versus 5, but we wanted to bring you more
this just in, that game's already over.
Exactly. We wanted to give you more than like 3 minutes of actual gameplay. So this is an intriguing one. I have played my share of Icelander mirrors. They are quite intricate and layered. So we will get that match on screen as the players are just kind of shuffling up and getting ready to go now. Again, Icelander versus Icelander, you're always thinking, well, it's Icelander's turn. But no, it's Icelander's turn. But it's that Icelander's this Icelander. Again, the fact that you're stacking, and we've seen how important it is to properly time things. A good Icelander player is one thing. A good Icelander player who can successfully navigate the mirror, a whole different beast.
Yeah, I think the real thing to actually keep an eye out for is the generic attacks. We touched on it a bit during the Dromai matchup because of cards like Brothers in Arms, but here, those Scar for Scars or anything that's going to allow you to generate additional pressure beyond just the arcane damage, I think will come in clutch. So that's something that I want to keep an eye on.
The other thing to keep an eye on, bees. They're dangerous. Remember a few years
They're also really important for our food source, though.
Wasps.
Yes.
The most useless thing.
Bee slander.
No, bees are great. Bees are awesome. But do you not remember a couple years ago there was that whole outcry of like this onslaught of like murder hornets or something?
Yeah, we had the murder hornets, but like I remember being a kid in the 90s and we were worried about the Africanized honeybees, the killer bees. I think there was like a made-for-TV movie about the swarm that was going to kill us all.
Yeah. There's this sort of, this array of various aggressive militarized animals like the flying squirrel, the electric eel, the killer bee.
Listen, I need to point something out, though. Bees, wasps, doesn't matter. They're all susceptible to cold weather aka Frost, aka Icelander. To bring it back, we got the game ready to go. Let's jump in, see how these players navigate the swarm of bees. No, I mean the matchup.
Yeah, well, a swarm of these being Icelanders on the board right now, one of which is Cold Foil. Love to see it. Again, bringing in that slabbed Icelander. Now, again, this is that Michael Fang? That looks like Michael Fang, I think, playing against one of the that was the first team that we saw today. So they have been successful. It's Michael Fang on Icelander versus, unfortunately, I do not know the name of this player. We'll call him Dad. He's wearing a Dad shirt. So the importance, Charmer, of going first in this matchup is nearly immeasurable.
Well, we can measure it because
In metric, please. I'm Canadian.
it's 7 centimeters precisely.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So please clip that. Charmer saying it's 7 centimeters. Off to the game we go.
Well, it's 7 centimeters because it's Icelander and it's cold. We have to factor that in. Listen, we're casting Dad versus Michael Fang, which means there's going to be plenty of Dad jokes.
Sure. I was in the pool, the Icelander pool.
Plenty of cold takes, if you will.
Sure. Absolutely. You can't have hot takes when there's frostbite everywhere. There's no thaw in these decks because that's a draconic card. You can't have it.
As we get ready to actually have this game get started, I have realized that Uprising as a set is really just the icy hot of Flesh and Blood.
Q Shaq coming in being like, that was terrible. That was horror awful. Horror awful.
It was worth it for the look on your face.
Okay. So it looks like Michael Fang is going to player that's going to be going first here. There is Arcane Barrier, if I'm not mistaken. Is there Arcane Barrier? There's Quelling Slippers on both heroes. The importance on the equipment here and having Quell. Both players need access to blue. Blue for Icelander is so important, but going first here allows the Icelander player to not just attack first, but also have the opportunity to arsenal first and be able to respond and swing that Waning Moon on their opponent's turn. So going first here is incredibly valuable. So the first thing that occurs here is pitching to deal with the first onslaught. That's a red Aether Hail. I believe that comes in for 4.
Yes, if this is the red, it should be coming in for 4. The thing that you were asking about with the equipment, both players have matching equipment here. You've got the slippers that have the Quell. You've got the hands that have the Quell. But it is worth noting the Wizard's Cloak actually has Arcane Barrier. So that will be a permanent way that you can, throughout the match, reduce that damage. However, it does also have that really useful activation. So we'll have to see when that comes into play. And we have one Aether Hail answered with another potential Aether Hail clapping back.
All right, so here's where going first is so important, because Michael Fang now is going to be looking at his arsenal and saying, all right, in response to this, we're going to do some nasty stuff. And if that's an ice card in the arsenal, it's going to create a frostbite, which before that resolves, you might see the Waning Moon. So again, lots of layers, lots of small margins, windows for both players to go ahead and answer. And on this matchup, Charmer might just come down to whoever has the most blues and has them at the opportune times.
Well, it also legitimately might come down to whoever went first, because that means you're going to have that first opportunity to abuse your arsenal. So, for example, if you're playing a card from your arsenal here and then activating your own Waning Moon, then you could get damage back in return and you'll stay ahead. You kind of start ahead and stay ahead. But here, what we saw was a pitch for Arcane Barrier to reduce the damage by 1. That leaves that 2 floating. It makes me wonder if it's maybe a 0-cost card in the arsenal, and then your 2 floating will still be for the Waning Moon. If you know you don't have to spend any pitch on your arsenal card, then reduce the damage with Arcane Barrier. Why not?
Is this our first mirror match of the day?
I believe it is.
I believe it is, yeah. And there's a Healing Balm. That's coming out.
This is also a really big deal.
Yeah, no, these are great because, again, Healing Balm Blue is a non-attack action, so you'll gain a life, but you'll also activate Waning Moon. So it's basically a 4-point swing, a 4 life total swing, 1 gain on one side plus the 3 damage on the other. So as you can see, the life total is slowly dwindling. Arcane Barrier can only absorb so much. Eventually, you're going to have to make way for quelling slippers and pitching to those, and those might have a decent effect as well, and those are going to be valuable. So most of the action, most of the fireworks are going to be coming from the player whose turn it isn't, which is odd. I mean, but that's the way Wizard rolls.
Yeah, so interesting, right? The player there that was the active player still ended up taking more damage that turn, and they also had to Arcane Barrier on their own turn. Now, they did place a card in Arsenal, so now, things are flipped situationally. We're going to see an Aether Dart here. That is successful, that land, so that is 1 damage back to Michael, but I believe this is an Icebind again that has been fused. That's why you see the Aether Hail there. So this is an Icebind that has been fused, that is played, but you have the health lead. So as I was saying before, if you go first, you kind of have the health lead, right? You're up 14-12 thanks to the healing. That was, again, a massive play there. But you're going to get this forward pressure arsenal. You'll always have that kind of edge, right? That initiative. And so it's up to your opponent to find a way to wrestle that away or just get lucky. Sometimes if you don't find a blue, then you fall behind. That's going to be another critical thing to pay attention to, is whether or not one of these players has hands where they can't arsenal a blue.
One of the key components to this matchup, one of the most impactful cards, is going to be Dampen. Whoever has a Dampen in their pool and has access to it is going to be very, very, I don't want to say favored, but that's a tempo swinging card. Dampen is a card that essentially does arcane damage, but for the amount of darkane damage that is dealt to the opponent, prevent that amount coming back the other way. So if there's a situation where an opponent or you as a player can play, let's say, a blue Dampen in response to your opponent's arcane damage dealt, you might be able to do a little bit of double duty, getting the arcane damage in and preventing the arcane damage coming out. But again, when both players are playing at instant speed, you have to make sure that
I was just about to say, counterpoint to that.
Yeah.
You're right. Dampen is going to potentially be clutch, but it only prevents damage based on the damage you do. So if they then counter your Dampen with the Quell, with the Miter, then your original damage still pushes. This is the Wizard mind games, right? It is you doing math on a chalkboard, trying to figure out how you can come out on top from all of these exchanges. Meanwhile, our actual game, we are getting to the resolution part of this Icebind here. We see some prevention, but 2 damage is getting through.
I have to say, like, part of the appeal, there's a lot of appeal about playing Icelander. It's a fun hero to play when you have a good pool, but a lot of the the elements that kind of push you away from it are not necessarily because you don't want to play Icelander against something like Dromai. You don't want to play Icelander against Icelander. You just do not want to have to do the mental gymnastics to sort this stuff out.
All right, so they kind of sped through that really quickly, but the Waning Moon was also triggered there. Again, that started with an Aether Dart from the player who it was not their turn. At the end of things, the Waning Moon went through. Michael took 3 damage, and so that's why we are at that 11-10. So we started 18-18, and we are basically trading blow for blow. The 1 health differential, again, goes back to that healing that was done earlier, and I think that might end up being an incredibly clutch play, but Michael did arsenal a card. It is now Dad's turn, and we are going to start things off with, again, a Polar Cap. Looks like that's a red one, and it's going to have a fuse. So the way this works is if it deals arcane damage, the opponent will get a Frostbite token because of the fuse.
There's Dad's chair. Dad has a chair, right? Like in the living room, a special chair just for Dad, and then there's Dad's turn. And you don't mess with Dad's turn. Michael Feng is saying, before Dad resolves, we're going to do some stuff here. So there's a good chance, again, with 12 packs that were open, that there's going to be plenty of blues. So it looks like Michael Feng is just kind of deciding, when do I respond to this? Does this Frostbite matter? What do I need to do? What am I pitching? Because there's a good chance that there's going to be cards played in response to this action that is threatening a potential Frostbite.
4 cards in hand, 1 in arsenal. A lot of options to consider. Still full equipment for both players. I think that's going to be a lot more relevant when the health totals get low. That's when you're going to start seeing them make those decisions of, do I save cards for offense or do I start using it for defense? And right now we see the answer to the Polar Cap is the Aether Hail. Again, this is one of my favorites in this set because it costs 1 very specifically. And so that leaves you with the 2 open for the waning moon. So it was a blue pitch into the hail, into the moon. We can see the robes are placed over there for the hail, so that is the arcane barrier that was blocking that. But the moon connects, and so that's why we are down to the 6 health on the dad side, but then we have to come back and resolve the polar cap. So again, the polar cap's still pending. These are all plays in response.
And there's going to be a lot of Arsenal draw up. Icelander does a lot of the work, a lot of the heavy lifting on their opponent's turn, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And later in the game, you know, if you have the card that can go in Arsenal and draw up, that's fine because you'll be able to keep some of the cards, maybe activate your arcane barrier. You don't want to present a situation where you're presenting attacks, emptying your hand, and then the opposing Icelander starts getting a little bit nitty-gritty. But this is a critical juncture because one player has an Arsenal and the other does not. This is where things fall apart.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap what happened, because it went quickly, Michael Fang did end up taking a damage from the polar cap. Something was blocked by the miter as well, so that's why we're back to this 10 to, I believe it's 6 now, health totals. But on Michael's turn, it was just an Arsenal and then pass, so we are back to Dad's turn. So Michael has an Arsenal, Dad does not, but it is Dad's turn, so at the end of this, we'll potentially play something to get it going. But this is where Dad does start to fall behind, right? You're lower on health. You were going second, so you were kind of behind the 8 ball to begin with, but you're lower on health. Your opponent also still has an Arsenal. So even if you want to generate offense here, that opens the window for them to fire back. Essentially, a good wizard player will wait for you to have little to no pitch, so you can't quell, you can't arcane barrier.
Precisely. And, you know, there is a potential here where, depending on what cards Dad is going to be committing here, Michael could be patient, pitch, present some damage, then swing with the waning moon, go to Arsenal, and then do the exact same thing next turn for lethal. And that's a dangerous game. Again, typically these games, obviously going first is a massive, massive advantage, but as soon as one of the players loses the Arsenal slot, and it becomes a struggle to regain it, that's a lot of lost tempo, that's a lot of lost opportunity to start striking back, and Michael Fang's in a commanding position right now.
So here it looks like Dad is leading off with an Arctic Incarceration, trying to donate some Frostbites. That is certainly going to have Michael respond because you want to get these in before the Frostbites are live. It looks like that Dampen that you were talking about is now popping out for Michael. So this is going to be a blue Dampen from the Arsenal that Dad now has to make the decision. As I was saying, do you pay to prevent this damage, or do you continue to take damage to throw more offense, right? Because you have a Waning Moon potential activation. You've already played your non-attack. So if you wanted to pitch for the moon and then you wanted to Arsenal your other card, it means you have 1 to work with here for, you know, Arcane Barrier or other effects.
Yeah, I mean, pitch for the moon, shoot for the moon. You're almost there if you're Michael Fang. And look who's entered the picture just as a nice little little piece of advice giver on the side there. Some counsel would be Mr. Brendan Patrick is right next to both next to Michael Fang. So again, team dynamics allows you to go ahead and consult with your teammates on turns. But I don't think Michael Fang is really. Yeah, he's in a commanding position. Michael Fang is a calling winner. I don't think he's not phoning a friend in on this one. There's no 50-50s. He's got this in the bag.
No, this is very clearly Brendan just upset that he's not been on the camera yet today. Like
no, but when he's on camera, he loses. I think this was definitely strategic. He probably chose camera B or spot B because at the beginning of this tournament, they actually announced and said, if you are the B player, you will never be on camera due to just the logistics of where the cameras are. So he probably snapped that B right off, grabbed that green bracelet and said, I am in spot B. You cannot take this away from me.
So with this exchange here, again, Dad taking a lot of damage on his own turn, now all the way down to 3 between the Dampen and the Waning Moon activation from Michael. Dad does get a card in the Arsenal this time around, though, but you're at 3. And that means you're stuck paying for defensive plays from here on out. If you try to go on offense and you don't have the pitch for defense, Michael will just close out the game. The one thing working in your favor is that this is likely just going to be an arsenal pass for Michael. You've got 3 Frostbite tokens and only 1 card in hand, so he will likely just start by passing priority, forcing Dad to do something if he wants to do it at that instant timetable.
Now there's a problem here, because if that card in Arsenal is not doing enough damage, I mean, if that's like an Aether Dart for 1, if it's a Frosting for 1, or anything that deals 1, you can easily just Arcane Barrier that. Arcane Barrier also the Waning Moon, quell it, do whatever, and that becomes problematic. So this is not necessarily 100% in the bag, but you know, Michael Feng has to feel good about his odds here. You just go ahead and pocket the blue card, draw the card. Look, there's fist bumps. This is possibly a fist bump because both other players won, so this game here might be a formality, but seeing the intricacies of the Icelander mirror is very important for players to just understand how many layers you have to peel back to just to get to the resolution state of the first card played.
So there's also the interesting possibility, you know, we talked about windows to get back into the game, and yesterday in the broadcast I talked about how you always play to your outs, right? You never just accept the mental defeat. So there is a chance, theoretically, that Michael doesn't have a blue card to Arsenal here. And so he's passed priority, but what if, hypothetically, he doesn't have an Arsenal and Dad does have some damage here, and then when it comes back to Dad's turn, he gets another Arsenal card, right? This is a matchup. Icelander versus Icelander is a matchup where if you whiff on arsenaling a blue card even 1 time, it creates a huge window of opportunity. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens when this turn finally resolves, because again, Michael only has that 1 card, but if it just happens to not be a blue non-attack, Dad could be right back in this.
Plenty of opportunity again for both players, and when the turn structures are not clear-cut, when you're able to deal damage on your opponent's turn at instant speed between resolutions of cards, you know, it gets complicated. The life totals, however, create a scenario where Michael Feng might be able to just absorb damage in order to complete a situation. But hey, 5 Frostbites and then move to Arsenal. I mean, the 5 Frostbites is incredibly detrimental. But look, Michael went down to 5, and swinging now with Waning Moon. All right, so it looks like Michael is just content to go down to 2, and there's the situation. Now, the problem here is that how are you going to slide in with your damage to make sure that... So this has to be perfectly timed here for this to happen. So here's the first salvo, a red Aether Hail, 4 Arcane. What Michael's going to do here is respond to this. He's going to pitch blue, come in with, what is that? Aether Hail blue, that is 2 damage. So 2 damage being presented. And he's going to go down to 1 and say, all right, well, this resolves. What are you going to do? He's going to say, all right, well, you get a Frostbite. And with the remaining resources, he's going to present the staff.
Moon.
However, what can happen here is that Dad can respond to this with his own Waning Moon for 2. But with Arcane Barrier still up in a full grip that Michael Feng has, this can be problematic. This is where timing is so critical, and responses on top of responses on top of responses. The stack is piled, and he knows it too.
I was just going to say, and it's not even just that it's the Arcane Barrier, it's that you have access to the 3 sources, because Quell works very similar to Arcane Barrier. You have to have a source per damage you're trying to prevent, but because they had the gloves, they had the boots, and then again the Arcane Barrier on the cloak, that means that you could pitch a blue and prevent a full 3 back from the Waning Moon.
Yeah.
So really clutch that you held onto the equipment. Great job by Michael. We did see the player who went first did end up taking it down. This was one of those cases where going first mattered a lot, but also you cannot miss those arsenals. I don't think that Michael had a single turn where he was not putting a card in the arsenal.
That's what I figured out as we kept going. I'm like, wow, Icelander feels great when you have that blue arsenal, when you have the right amount, the right balance of blues, you have access to being able to play on your opponent's turn. But the second that you falter, that house of cards blows away, and again, poof, it's all smoke and mirrors, and then you're struggling because you're blocking out at a lower life total. Like you mentioned, the fact that the game is so precisely balanced that Icelander is 18. She's not 19, she's not 17, she's not 20, she's 18. That's the right amount. And, you know, if you go with the mantra that your life is a resource like anything else, and you let it dwindle away, you have to start blocking. But man, does it feel bad when you're Icelander without an arsenal. That is the other tipping point of these matchups and these mirrors specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with Icelander is it's not just the blues for the arsenal, but you also need them to pay for things. It took me a bit to figure it out, but I really feel like in a 30-card deck, you want half of it to be blues.
Minimum.
Because you want to say for every 4 cards I draw, I want 2 of them to be a blue. One that I'm arsenaling and one that I'm using to pay for things. And again, that's a minimum. So I think that once players have figured that out, because we've seen a lot of blues here, she has started to feel a lot better, play a lot better. But again, well navigated by Michael. Congratulations on the victory. And Flake's getting what he wanted. It's just a lot of Icelander today.
Love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's my favorite hero out of the whole set. Taking it into constructed is a different story. How will she look as a classic constructed hero, which Icelander is now?
Yeah.
How will that operate, in conjunction with the former wizard pool that exists, and all the other ice cards that you might have access to from Tales of Aria. There's so many different options here, but friends, do not go away. We have the 5th and final round of the Team Sealed event before we cut to top 4. I'm Flake. This is Charmer. Realm Gaming Network here in Ohio. We'll be back shortly. Here in Ohio, it is the Realm Gaming Team Sealed Uprising. We got a team of our own now, Charmer. We've just called on a ringer.
We decided that we were tired of seeing these teams of 3 all day long, so we have added a third. Welcome, Carolina. If you are from the Flesh and Blood community, you probably know her from the cosplay episode of Flake's podcast.
Well, and I mean, not just that. It's the fact that she won the cosplay contest in the Pro Tour New Jersey. It's not, nobody is famous because of my podcast.
You're not a kingmaker, or in this case, a queenmaker?
Absolutely not. None of those. So how are you, Carolyn?
I'm amazing. I have been playing all weekend. I'm not playing the teams this weekend, so I am here to commentate on the teams.
Well, that's what you're here to do. It's going to be great. We got a FaB mirror matchup. We were looking around, and I think it's the 3-pack that we're going up against over here. We're all 3 mirror matches. So we already did the Icelander mirror match just a second ago.
Yes.
Dromai was off the table, unfortunately. That was the one that we kind of wanted, but we got one hell of a matchup, actually. It's not just the fact that it's 5 versus 5. This is going to be one hell of a barn burner, but the players involved. Brendan Patrick makes his triumphant return to on-screen. So place your bets, friends. Place your bets.
Yeah, and this is one of the teams that is undefeated. And again, it's going to be a FaB mirror. Basically, first person to block loses. And yes, I was going to say, we're going to ask Carolina. I know she's been playing a lot of FaB this weekend. How have your FaB mirrors been?
Do you want the real answer?
I do, actually.
Not good. Not good. Not good. I end up getting Phoenix Flame. Phoenix Form. Real bad. Real bad.
Typically, I mean, there's so much red go. Again, we're going to the match right now. Let's dive right in. Carolina, you can give us a little bit of the PTSD of seeing this, but there's Brendan Patrick on your left, starting things off with just an Emberblade. And again, I think a part of this, if you're going first, again, you don't want to give your opponent too much opportunity to cycle. You don't want to burn through some of those red cards. So just pitching away, going in with the weapon swing is just a way to maybe just cite too many blues, possibly, I think, in Brendan Patrick's hand.
That is one possibility, or perhaps you have some spicy attack reactions, or D-reacts, actually, because I know that we were talking to him before this. He's got them in the list, and you want to set those up in the arsenal.
Are you calling them A-reacts? Can you call them that? I mean, they could be very Canadian, like EH, like A-reacts.
A-reacts.
Oh, that's a react, eh?
That's a react, eh? What a react, eh? So that's basically the case here. That's what I'm suspecting. I'm just kind of get a peek there at Brendan Patrick's hand. Now, Carolina, in your experience, those FaB mirrors going first, going second, like how much of a detriment is it to go first versus going second, or vice versa?
So that's the thing. I think it might be better to go second. I mean, sure, you can go first, but would you want them to filter out their hand?
Right.
Would you want them to do? Like, you don't know what they're going to do. They could be on a fatigue plan. They could just take everything. That's the best situations where they just take everything and keep their hand, and boom, you're at an advantage. But see that?
That is
Phoenix
Flame
Yep.
coming in. So this is the crackback on really turn one, or again, we affectionately call that first turn 0 because both players get to draw back up. But this is an interesting debate that I've had a lot this weekend. In the FaB mirror, do you want to go first or go second? Because you also, when you go second, you get to quote unquote attack their hand first. But that's assuming they're going to block. People don't block in the FaB mirror. So when you go first,
not at all.
maybe potentially getting that chip damage in, having the first opportunity to arsenal, that matters as well. But here, this is an explosive turn, already taking Brendan down to 10.
Yeah, and I mean, the debate of going first, going second, that was just one of the debates we had this weekend. We also had the Backstreet Boys versus NSYNC debate, which is yet to be settled. But
NSYNC.
Well, I will educate you one day, young lady. But still, the thing about it is, again, it's momentum versus, it's like tempo versus hand filtration, things like that. Getting an arsenal first versus allowing your opponent to gain the momentum and the tempo back by, having the first clap back. And now look at that. Brendan Patrick just fearless. Going down to 10. We spoke about this earlier. The Icelander mirror was the one that we featured versus the FaB mirror. The FaB mirror was actually Brendan Patrick, and he was in the booth talking to us off screen, just saying, hey, here's my deck, this is what we're doing, and we had a FaB mirror, and Charmer, you asked him, how long did that match last?
Yeah, he said it was pretty quick. However, it went longer than it was supposed to because his opponent took some time deciding how they were dying, but ultimately he did find the victory. And so this is interesting because we have a Blaze Headlong right out of the gate and no red card that was played, so unless I had missed it. Oh, I did miss it. There was the Rise from the Ashes. It's just already in the pile, so that's why the Blaze Headlong had to go again.
So 3 Draconic Chain Links is what you want to get that free recursion of a Phoenix Flame.
Oof.
Oh, more cards coming through. Look at this. Take a look. I mean, Brendan Patrick has just been presenting lethal, and Jordan doing a good job just saying, all right, where's the Phoenix Flame? Is it in there? Getting a check. He's just going to eat this
Going
back.
down to 3.
I mean, and this is what you do, right? I mean, Carolina, you know exactly how the power of what FaB can do. You've done the FaB mirror. Going down to 3, if you can pressure for lethal, you have to take your licks to get the momentum back.
Yeah. I think it really does. I mean, you really do have to do the calculations in your head before you go down to such a lethal life total. I'm sure he does have. That's interesting.
So starting it off, again, pitching for 1, I believe, if not mistaken, that's a 4-go again. Taking it. Brendan saying, let's go, baby. Charge it.
4-go again. And he is going to take it. This is essentially where the game starts to be decided. I said it before. Usually, you don't want to be the first player forced to block when you're in the FaB, right? So here, we're going to see a situation where Brendan has to start blocking this round. If you let the other player go with their full hand, it will be enough to present lethal. So this is where both players are going to start navigating this without a full hand. But what's more important in the FaB mirror specifically is when you don't have a full hand, it also starts to affect your chain links. The Draconic chain links care about the number and the order that you play them in. And when you only have 2 cards, for example, in your hand each round, when it starts to go back and forth, it becomes a lot harder to get those links going.
Jordan is part of the Flesh and Pod podcast alongside Abby and Logan Peterson, who we already saw Logan Peterson on screen. An excellent podcast. I do highly recommend it. And, of course, Brendan Patrick of the Arsenal Pass podcast. So lots of great figures, lots of great personalities here at this tournament in Ohio. And like you mentioned, a lot of the fireworks occur early, but this is where really the number crunching occurs. You have to figure out what's the best block, what's the best clap back, how much am I going to take in order to swing back. And Brendan is just going to get charged with 2 here, and Jordan just kind of taking stock here, going to go ahead and pick up a Phoenix Flame for free based on that FaB ability. And that's the beauty of FaB, is just being able to cheekily just swing in for an extra 1, that extra little Kadachi with wings.
That's a cute name, Kadachi with wings.
That's the name of my rap album, actually.
Oh, I'm sure it's fire.
Oh, pure fire.
And so this has been an amazing back and forth between these 2 players. We've seen big damage turns from both of them, back and forth, back and forth. You know what else is back? Backstreet's back.
Yes.
So
all
we
right.
need to revisit that because that was a really poor choice by you, Carolina. I'm sorry.
I'm so
I gotta say, you gotta go with the original. I mean, if you're talking about the original, it's New Kids on the Block. Let's be real. But
Oh. Flake's got the right stuff.
I got the right stuff. I'm hanging tough, baby. Gotta say, yeah, these are. We're talking about songs that are so old. Carolina wouldn't even have thought when they came out.
I don't think she knows
these
who New Kids on the Block
references.
is, but that's okay.
They're still New Kids. I think, didn't they have a residency with Backstreet Boys in Vegas? I think they did.
They did for about a year and a half.
Did you see them?
No, I did not see
You're
them.
missing out. You're missing out. Like, Vegas is the place where basically nostalgia goes to just be cryostasis.
Oh, so that was a really important development there because Brendan had to block with 2 cards to keep that 3 health, and now we're going to come back with a, again, I think this is Rising Resentment, so it's going to be a 0 cost attack with Go Again, and at least try to choose some cards out of the opponent's hand. I believe that this is going to be threatening 3, so you'll get at least 1, but this is, again, the nitty-gritty, the back and forth at the end of the game.
Yeah, this is where it gets greasy, as they say. And yeah, decisions have to be made. This is where a lot of the dialogue occurs, a lot of the back and forth, taking stock. But the difference here is that this isn't constructed, so you don't know what the other opponent may have. It's not, you may be looking through graveyards, but what are you really taking stock of? You don't know what your opponent has. There will be deck lists traded for the top 4, but when you're having that discussion of or trying to take stock on things, you have no clue how many of something. So it's not like if I block this, there's no others, or do I block, you don't know what's coming up after this. So it's a very, very intricate, analysis of what's happening.
Carolina, I can't help but notice you're doing mental math here. Are you trying to calculate lethal based on the hand?
I am trying to calculate lethal and see if he is actually... Oh, he's not going to block with it. I thought he was going to block with that.
Yeah, she happened to notice. We have to say it quietly in case they can hear us. But we have noticed there is an Oasis Respite in the hand. So there is a defensive reaction available to the blocker here.
But Jordan may be thinking here that given the fact that the health totals are even-Steven, if he blocks with let's say he blocks to take the 1, the Oasis Respite will gain extra value by giving him the extra life. He may be thinking that, given the fact that this attack sequence might not be over, or is Brendan, is Brendan completely juiced here? Like, is he out of cards?
Yes, this was his only card left after having to block with 3 cards the previous turn. So
Pitching an Oasis Respite. Okay.
So he's going down to 1, and that is some dangerous territory.
So here was the discussion that he probably had with the teammate. You could have blocked all of it with that, but instead just pitching to the Quell meant you keep 3 cards as opposed to having to pitch and use the Respite. That would have been 2 cards out of your hand. So now you go into this turn with your opponent at 3, and you get a 3-card hand, again, forcing them to block or trying to push through that damage.
Yeah, Brendan Patrick's got 2 opponents here. Jordan and the monkey on his back that has been just plaguing him, haunting him. His on-camera career is just, you talk about XO or X1 or XO. He's OX.
Yeah, he has never had a victory on camera, including yesterday. He was forced to cast with Flake. That is a definite L. So the streak continues.
Yes, thank you. 2 things that I've been taking today. Reminders that I'm Canadian at high octane clips.
Like, can you say sorry?
I will not.
Okay.
I apologize. So they will continue to block here, but yeah. Now, sealed is a different thing. I mean, you're limited to the cards that you're given in your pool, and Team Sealed, it's 12. You have a bigger pool that you can kind of go through. But when you're drafting, it's a different story, and there's so many red go-agains that at a certain point you got to think that there's too much of a good thing. How many drafts have you done of Uprising so far, Carolina?
Well, I've done about 3, so not a lot. I'm sorry. About 3, so not a lot. I'm still getting used to all of the new cards and all of the new lines. But every single line I do is that's every play that I do is very fun.
Every play you do is very fun. I mean, look, it's a fun set. It's absolutely a fun set as we reset here in Ohio. We're in Ashland for the Team Sealed. This is the final round. I think both teams, I believe, are perfectly squared away, but it's getting gritty.
All right, so this is a very critical moment in the game because Brendan arsenaled a card. I'm so shocked I can't even get it to come out of my mouth. He arsenaled a card. He didn't have any offense whatsoever. They're both at 1, so we're going to have a turn where one player has a full 4-card hand to attack the other player with a 4-card hand. The problem is that if you're the defending FaB, traditionally blocking is not something you want to do. This Rise from the Ashes is going to be a big boost to the next attack, as well as getting back that Phoenix Flame.
That's dangerous.
This is a nightmare when you're at 1 because, again, every card now has the on-hit effect of you die.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Just that?
Yeah, just that.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to make sure here that it's kind of like when you're holding on to your mask of momentum when your opponent's at like 2 health. It's like, what's the point? You give that up, and in this case, every card that trickles through is dangerous. Now, we saw that in the previous matchup there, Charmer, the importance of something like Heat Wave. In this case, neither player has a Heat Wave.
Neither player has a heat wave, but it's not going to matter because, again, you don't need to boost the Phoenix Flame when you're at 1.
Right.
This is all danger zone. And speaking of that, we're going to see a start with 1, but this is going to get the boost from the Rise. So even though it is not the 2nd or greater chain link, still threatening lethal.
Yeah, and getting to awkward, numbers like those 4s, those breakpoints, is going to be clutch here. And I think that if Brendan just has a grip here that is just lacking in 3 blocks, there's plenty of them in Uprising. Keep in mind that that's not a cracked bauble in his hand. It's a proxy for a foil card, a foil Majestic. So that is not a proxy. I believe it's a 3 block that's in his hand. So he's not like gooned by it, but he has the double block here.
So he's covering the
is
proxy,
good.
but he's showing. So the reason they're fist bumping there is, I believe the final attack, the final card that was coming would have represented lethal because he had the double block there. It was not a 3 block, and that means that is, again, unfortunately, a loss for Brendan.
Yeah.
He is going to be very upset when he finds out we requested that match.
We did request that match, and it's kind of like we were both, we were judge, jury, and executioner. And then, no, actually, we were judge, jury, and unfortunately it was Jordan who was the executioner in this case. But, I mean, Carolina, you've played 5 meters, you've played plenty of Uprising and Limited. Is that more or less how the games go as we saw it over here?
Oh, exactly. It's exactly how it goes. It goes like that, or if I can fatigue you. Have you ever done that?
I have not. I mean, like, I have been gooned by Fi in the sense of, like, Fi never gets to a position where they have to fatigue me because usually I'm just taking it off the chin for, I don't know, 4 or 5 consecutive turns. Even when you're trying to block out, the fact that Phoenix Flame eventually just comes through and just threatens lethal. You mentioned in the previous game, getting to 2 can be dangerous because the first one that leaks through, the first one that you do not block with the Heat Wave as a threat. There's no Heat Wave here, but that one was the same thing. And having access to that Phoenix Flame that you can just pull out of your graveyard essentially for free when you have the three chain links. The player that loses their momentum first is typically going to, it's just an inevitability.
Yeah, just one off turn, you're
kind of done.
cooked.
And to Carolina's point, it might sound weird even talking about fatigue with Fi, but what happens sometimes is if you get a player on the defensive and they're forced to block Fi over and over, the blocking player actually spends more cards than Fi because, again, we mentioned earlier on the broadcast, Fi's the only hero in the set that has a reusable weapon that's non-conditional. And so that is going to eat up a block, usually a 3 block as well. And so between that and the recurring Phoenix Flame, Fi actually has a lot of ways to force your opponent to spend cards when you're not really truly spending cards as Fi. So it's weird because we usually think of fatigue game plans on defensive heroes, but Fi can force your opponent to defend until they run out of cards.
Yeah, it's fascinating in terms of how that works. You're almost like a fatigue plan on the other side of the coin, where it's just unique in terms of how the dynamics of the hero particularly works. And again, the fact that the set has no majestic weapons, it has nothing beyond the tokens. The fact that Fi is the only hero with a weapon that swings is a massive, massive upgrade.
Absolutely.
Carolina?
yes.
Perfect. You did well. It was awesome to have you hear your perspective and everything. What's going on with the cosplay thing? What's next on the docket?
We've been working. I've been working on a lot of
You
things.
say we. I mean, I haven't
Well,
done jack.
me
So.
and my cat.
And your cat.
Yes.
The one that attacked you.
We don't have to talk about that.
We don't have to, but we always could. But again, I mean.
Yes, me and my cat are working on a lot of things at the moment. I am working on 3 different cosplays at the exact same time, and it is a lot.
Relaxing and not stressful whatsoever.
Oh, not in any way, shape, or form. I can definitely fit time to eat.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Might as well. Did you feed the cat? Maybe that's why it lashed out.
No, he's fat. So.
Easy. Well, maybe he's
fine.
upset because you keep calling him fat. Stop shaming the damn cat, okay?
He eats like 6 times a day.
I mean, if in a perfect world, that's kind of my move too.
Let's
be real.
It's perfect for me too.
Yeah, if I wasn't too lazy to buy new pants, I would probably just continue eating. So, 5 rounds in the books, Charmer. Your first foray here into like my first foray as well into casting any type of team event, and I think that this is something that's not just enjoyable for the players, but for us as well. In a perfect world, man, we'd have buttons to just go game A, game B, game C.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that. That would be so exciting if we could jump between them.
Just to sort of keep track of things. I mean, because the FaB matches, they wrap up quick, and then you can go to the Dromai, you can go to whoever else is out there. But if there is an actual situation where, it's both teams are squared away 1-1, you go to the dramatic finish. And I think that that's something that we'll work on in the future. I think that it's sort of on everyone's wish list. The ideal matchup. Now we're going to be going up into the top 4, but what has been the best matchup to cast? Has it been Icelander versus Dromai? Has it been the Icelander mirror match? Has it been the FaB mirror match? Like what to you has been the most intriguing matchup, the most fulfilling matchup?
I think from the ones we've seen on the broadcast today, I keep thinking about the Icelander Dromai matchup, where you're trying to run that balance between having the dragons on board and then Icelander having to answer the dragons to get rid of the barrier. And then even specifically, we had that insane, play, counterplay. We saw Thamai come down, and then it was destroyed. We saw another dragon come down, brother in arms, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, that's the standout of the day. I thought that was a great back and forth, but all of them have been fun. Uprising is a fantastic set, and I'm just dying to play more and cover more.
What are you hoping to see in the finals?
Ooh. I have a very strong feeling there's going to be a FaB mirror, but I'm really hoping for an Islander and Dromai, which...
Those to me are always the most intriguing.
Good. It's so good.
It was probably the marquee match of the week of this particular, of today, frankly, was that matchup, the Charles Dunn versus that Icelander that was so resilient, seemed to have all the answers, and it came down to it. We are wrapping up round 5, ladies and gentlemen. That would be all she wrote. When it comes to the Swiss rounds, Charmer, we've got top 4 around the corner.
That's right. We're going to cut to the top 4, and then we're going to see folks battle it out for the crown so that they can say, hey, we are the winner of this amazing Team Sealed Uprising event. Again, this is kind of the first big event of this kind from the set. We had the premieres, right, and the pre-release weekends, but now that the set is sort of live here in the States, it's a little bit of a delay. This is the first real event of its kind. Yeah. First real event of its kind, and so just being able to hang that victory, right, on the wall and say, look, we were the team that did it first, I think that's going to go a long way pride-wise as well.
I dig it, and if all goes well, who knows? They may just turn into a giant push-up competition instead of an actual gameplay. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Carolina, you lead us out. Go for it.
What am I supposed to say? I'll see you soon. Goodbye.
For here in Ohio, this is the Realm Gaming. This is the Sealed, but Team Sealed. Team of 2 here with you. It's Uprising, my friend, and frankly, honestly, just seeing these new cards in action has been great, and even though there's a small pool of heroes, we don't get the same kind of variety as you might. In a normal tournament, there's really 3 to choose from, but the games have been pretty... I don't want to say, intriguing is not the right word. They've been close.
They've been competitive, right? They've been fun to watch. It's not really been the story of blowouts. I know yesterday during the constructed event, for example, we also had some great games, but we had some 40-0s. That has not been the case for the Team Sealed event. We have now been through the Swiss. We've cut to our top 4. We've got some great action coming up, including the return of Dromai to the broadcast. Dromai, of course, was part of one of the best games of the day, and then took a bit of a hiatus because somebody loves Icelander too much, but we get the dragons back.
Don't put that on me. Listen, they were great matches, frankly, and when it's like 3 mirror matches, you got to choose which ones are the most layered, the most intriguing, the most fascinating, and those were them. But this time, again, Dromai is what we want to see, and once the games are ready to go, we'll bring you straight to the action. But this is the top 4. Again, Team Sealed tournaments, the deck building aspect of the game, sharing a pool of cards amidst 3 players is quite a unique sort of approach. But here we are, we're already underway. It is, I believe, is that Dagan and versus, no, that's not Dagan. That's Logan Peterson on the right on Icelander facing Dromai. And this is that matchup that we saw typically kind of leaning a little bit towards Dromai because of the Ashwings having Arcane Barrier. But besides that, just that Charles Dunn game that we remember, like the match of the day with double Thamai and all that nonsense. But this is probably a different story.
Yeah, and this is potentially going to be just as riveting because it is, again, Icelander into Dromai, so the story is going to be the Aether Ashwings and potentially Thamai. Looks like we came to this already underway because we see the 1 damage taken by the Dromai player, but also we see that Ash and the Miter is already in the discard pile. So likely there was some damage prevented that was coming in and pitched with a red card to get that Ash, which is very, very useful if you're the Dromai player because you kind of revolve entirely around Ash.
Yeah, Helium Miter as well as it's a token. It's not drafted. It's not pulled out of a pack. It's nothing like that. Everybody gets one, and frankly, when it comes to value for Helios Miter against an Icelander that's going first, that is your best bet to use that card. That is the most value, the most range, the most latitude you can get from Helios Miter. And this is where the first swings of Dromai. But Dromai's got work to do. Much like Prism needs to get auras on the board and start developing that board state, Dromai's very much in the same boat. Get Ash, turn Ash into dragons, and that's what happens.
Yeah, I will say that I really enjoy the addition of this token helm, this token headpiece to the set because basically you showed up for Helios' birthday and everybody got a birthday hat. You all get to wear something on your head, take part in the uprising, take part in the fun, and it's a good time. It's kind of nice.
And look at that. I mean, Logan Peterson already going down to 10 and already at a disadvantage of Icelander being at 18. Logan taking his licks here saying, that's fine by me. There might be, was it a Scar for a Scar comeback? No. None of that. It is just the old-fashioned way of a non-attack action dealing some arcane damage, pitching that Singe, and that Singe is a very critical part to the counterattack, the Icelander counter to Dromai. But the difference is you're not going to hang on to a Singe without any Ashwings already on the board. So you can't be too greedy holding cards in scenarios where you're basically being less potent on your attack in order to hold cards that are good in very unique situations. Singe, a great card against Dromai, but I think what Logan wants to do here is just to pitch and start pressing as much damage as possible.
Now, it is worth noting, because you said lead off with the arcane damage and activate the moon, the card played here is actually Arctic Incarceration. So this should be trying to donate some Frostbites when it resolves, and we see that now. The token, again, that really cool foil token that they have for this event. So this is a red Arctic Incarceration donating 3 Frostbites, but then because you've played the non-attack, you can activate the Waning Moon, and then you end with the Arsenal. We've talked about how critical that is. You really need that to function as Icelander, but you have hopefully slowed things down, but yeah. You see big pitch here to get the attack going, continue the pressure. Your opponent's already at 10. If you can get them low, force them to start blocking, they're less likely to have cards for the arsenal in the future.
Yeah, Arctic Incarceration giving 3 Frostbites for essentially costs nothing is a good start. That's definitely the attack action that you, or the non-attack action you want to lead with. It gums up their turn. The Dromai player is going to have some Frostbite to sort of work through in order to get something going together. And, the critical nature of maintaining a blue card arsenal for Icelander, that's where the damage is done. She's, like I said, a lot of heavy lifting on the opponent's turn, but we've seen how it can sputter out. I'm curious, we don't have deck lists or anything. Logan Peterson, I'm guessing, should probably be packing about 15 blues to feel comfortable. In my experience, I would even go on top of that. I'd go 16 to 17 even just to feel right. Because, you and I were talking about this earlier. You draw a hand of all blues and another hand of all blues, that's already 8. That's over half of your pool of 15, and then it gets dangerous.
Yeah. Here we see the block going out. There was, from the arsenal, a Succumb to Winter so that you can get that damage in. I think the choice now is whether or not you want to take advantage of the Waning Moon. And the reason it's a decision is because if you do that here, you do get the 1 extra damage in, but it means your turn, when it comes back to you, will essentially just be Arsenal and pass because you need that card in the Arsenal. So we're also going to see a Ward. So again, this is the card that turns one of your ashes into...
it gives it the ability for
Ward to protect yourself from the arcane damage. So this is actually a really clutch play here.
So the beautiful part about this set as well is that in order to mitigate some of that arcane damage...
Oh, no, I apologize. See, this is the problem with the art. The arcane
blame
damage,
the art.
Yep,
Sure,
no,
just
the
blame
arcane
the
damage. Arcane damage is good. This is the one that transforms. So this has created that ash into an Aether Ashwing, given the +2/+0, and so that's why the die is on there. It's attacking for 3.
So it's attacking for 3 again, bumping it up a little bit, giving a little bit more, juice there. But look at this, Logan just fearless. Logan just taking his licks again. Many of these scenarios for Icelander uses using their life total as a resource, and just it's kind of like a clock. It's that Mission Impossible theme, that fuse that's lit, and just gives you enough. You just hope that 18 life is enough runway for you to be able to clap back. But eventually, push comes to shove, Logan's going to have to start donating cards to the blocking committee and starting to just soak up some of that damage. And Dromai is a slow starter, but Dromai also has some big attacks. There are those 8 attacks, those filthy kind of come out of nowhere. It's like, all right, you're dealing the one, and bam, 8 just comes out of nowhere. And that's something that Logan's going to have to be cognizant of. And, again, just kind of, he's sitting back. He knows that a lot of his action, a lot of his damage is going to be dealt on the opposing turn.
The big issue right now for the Icelander player, right? Your opponent has one Aether Ashwing. They also have the boots, so they already have access to Arcane Barrier 2. They do also still have the robes, which are the Quell robes. So if you're trying to close the gap, get those health totals a little bit closer, get them within striking distance of your arcane damage, you've got a lot more work to do. But you also have to play defense. You're already down to 6. So getting the damage in and keeping your health afloat and making sure that you have the cards in the economy to continue playing things and activating. How do you do it, right? You only have a 4-card hand. You're trying to do 3 different things with only 4 cards.
Listen, you know when you got that laundry list of things you got to do in a day and you got to kind of pack 2 things together and figure it out? Well, hey, you make it work at a certain point here, and Logan, unfortunately, here is really down to the wire. 5's okay. You can probably absorb a hit here, even with a dragon coming through. But the tough part here is going to be, can he connect with enough damage? If he comes through here, let's say with, the full block.
Well, it has to be, because that's a massive attack. We were just talking about those big, huge attacks. That's 3 cards defending and damage still spilled over.
And this is the momentum now that the Dromai player is going to have to capitalize on, because that 1 card in Arsenal for Icelander, if it costs 1, that's bad news. And not only that, even if it's free, you don't necessarily want to play it out of Arsenal if you don't have the Waning Moon Chaser on top of that. You have to pair those up. That's how you're going to deal damage. And unfortunately now for Logan Peterson on Icelander, the second that he's out there and donates all 4 cards again, it's going to be another, all right, draw up and let's see. He's now relying not so much on being able to block efficiently. He's hoping that the Dromai player just kind of trips up.
Yeah, ultimately when you're an Icelander, if you're trying to maximize your value, meaning you want to activate your staff on both turns, you want to play cards on both turns, you're looking at a card to play and a pitch to pay for it on your turn, and a card to play and a pitch to pay for it on their turn. That's 4 cards. That doesn't leave much room for defense.
Right.
So if you then go down to what I call the single turn play, right, then you're probably just setting up to play on their turn, maybe donate Frostbites. So that's only still leaving you 2 cards to block, because you still need the card in the arsenal and a pitch to pay for whatever it is in your Waning Moon. A 2-card hand is not really helping defensively when they've got the dragons and they've got these big attacks.
Well, again, ideal world situation. That's what you're doing when you've got 18 health or above 10, double-digit health. Charmer, in the ideal world, I'm the 6th Bash Creep Boy, okay? But we exist in reality here, and when you have a 3-pack going in for a life total, you can't do that. So what I think Logan is hoping for here is just to keep 1 blue in hand, or maybe the ideal situation right now for Logan, the best thing that he can do right now is to keep 2 cards. 1 to pitch, to play the Arsenal and the Waning Moon, and the other blue to gem in the Arsenal. And that's the best that he could possibly hope for, but the pressure here is mounting, and this is getting gross.
And this is going to be a dust up. Dust up does not naturally have go again, so this will be the end of this chain. You can feel good, blocking here to end things theoretically, but it's a red dust up. So this singe doesn't stop all the damage, and the on hit means that you can transform an ash into another Aether Ashwing. Now again, the dust up itself doesn't have go again, So that dragon hangs out till the next turn, but every dragon is a potential future problem in terms of damage, and every dragon is a source of arcane barrier. So at the end of that round, we saw a spell target one of the dragons. You can't really attack the hero directly while those Ashwings are there because you're just going to be arcane barriered away, right? You're not going to get the damage through.
Yeah, it's insult to injury with those Ashwings. They're presenting damage, and they're also presenting a source of absorption for the arcane damage, which otherwise becomes problematic. But, I mean, let's be real. There's still is that a quelling robe still on for Dromai?
Yes.
You have options, so you're sitting pretty here. The game plan now is to present as many attacks as possible against Logan to buy his hand every turn. If you connect for one, that's a bonus, but you're basically trying to cycle cards in order to get to a position where you can hit those breakpoints, where it is a 2-for-1 trade on attacks. But having Aether Ashwings in general right now is, again, you're just mounting those Kodachis. It's those spectral shields, those auras that you can swing with. And really just playing a red card in this format is not that hard to do.
Yeah, so the attack there was the Billowing Mirage, and this is one that is an attack with Go Again, but it also allows you to transform. So our Dromai player back up to 2 Aether Ashwings. The attack itself has natural Go Again. I can't tell if it was red or not, though. If it was red, then that turns on all of the dragons for having Go Again with the Dromai ability. Even if it was not red, you can still swing with at least one of them, but we also still see 2 cards in hand as well. A lot of potential gas when your opponent is at 2 health. So the first dragon goes, and it's blocked, and I think that's a Findals, yes. So there's going to be some health gain here.
All right, well, health gain is good. I mean, that works out. And I mean, like you said, the red card that you open with does turn on the dragons, but so does that video of you doing push-ups, Charmer. That also turns on all the dragons. So health gain is going to be big here. Again, that is very crucial, but unfortunately for Logan, that's a very tall order here to deal 11 damage. He's just got to start chipping away. He needs a window, but he has one now. He has cards in hand, and he could do something.
I was just about to say, he's created a window because the real big issue with that block was not just the health gain, but it popped Phantasm, right? The Findals is big enough that it killed the dragon, stopped the turn, and gave him health. That's huge. So now you come back with this red Scar for Scar. You still have another card in hand. You still have your arsenal. Maybe this is where you either close the gap or, at a minimum, you start to buy yourself time. Because if this eats some blocks, yes, your opponent stays at 11, but now their hand is smaller. And I think that's the way that you have to approach this. One way or the other, you have to either eat at their resources or their health so that they have to respond to you. Because for the last couple of turns, Icelander has just been playing whack-a-mole. They present something, and then you're like, okay, well, I have to do this to not die. They present something, okay, this is how I survive this turn. And now maybe you get some of that momentum back.
Oh, that is okay. So I think that this is possibly a way out here for Logan. The fact that he was able to, present damage, and the damage was taken, and in this case, it wasn't a certainty for Dromai that there would be a follow-up or not. Logan opting in this case and to hold the card that he had in hand, and maybe it's just the fact that it's a guaranteed blue, and maybe that's what he needed. He doesn't know what else he might be drawing up, so maybe he opted in this case to preserve an arsenal. The card in hand may have cost something. The arsenal is basically your window to victory here. That's your avenue. That's the lane you got to be in.
Yeah, I think the card in hand might have been stranded just because if it costs something and you don't have the ability to pitch, that's one thing. But also, if you are sitting on something that blocks pretty decent, sometimes when you have to be defensive, holding on to one of those block 3s or a defensive reaction can be a pretty big deal. But here we see the dragon attack off the Rake of Embers. The Aether Hail is targeting it to respond. So you're trying to kill that dragon and stop the chain. And that's important because that was a red, I believe, Rake, which would turn on all of the dragons having Go Again.
I made the joke already. I won't do it again.
You can make it as many times as you want.
No, my whole career is a joke. we don't need to dig into that one. But no, this is great. Unfortunately for our good friend Logan Peterson here, those Aether Hails would be so much better suited to be, tossed directly to face. And unfortunately, at the best that Logan can do is a Frostbite and 5 arcane damage, but there's so much arcane barrier already on the board. I think the most important part here is just to preserve an opportunity to stay alive. And that is a red Ice Bolt. That's some gas.
Yeah, again, we're talking about creating windows of opportunity. The one turn stopped because of the Phantasm and the block. That turn stopped because of the Dragon dying. And so now this is a round where you can threaten 5 damage, still have the card to Arsenal, and your opponent's now down to 7. So they're going to have to lose something here. There's no way you take this 5 damage. You're going to have to pitch and utilize some of this Arcane Barrier. Now, you do have 2 Aether Ashwings and the boots, so a blue pitch soaks up 3 of this all by itself. If you really want to go defensive, you still have Quell on both the sleeves and the robe, so you could block all 5 of this.
Or you can Respite. Why not?
Aggressive, yes. Also, Respite is a defense reaction that works against Arcane because it's a damage prevention shield, and that's pretty effective as well.
Definitely effective. That's a very, very efficient way to go ahead and block that out. Rather than pitching blue, you just get ring. I think it was a red Sift, and that's all right. What this does essentially is it gives the opportunity now for Dromai to just play a red and go to town. And when you have the 2 Aether Ashwings on there and your opponent at 3, danger zone. Absolutely danger zone. What are you pointing at? You're pointing at something.
I was just pointing at the dragon on my arm that I apparently am the master of turning on.
Are you?
I was noting to Flake earlier on the broadcast that normally I'm wearing long sleeve shirts, and so this is the first time in any of my coverage where my tattoos have been visible, and now folks will know how much of
just
a
how much of
degenerate
a
I am.
badass you are.
Yeah.
No, they're all going to see your Teletubby tattoos.
So I figured I might as well.
What is that? What are their names? Like Binky Winky and like Feely Deely or whatever their names are? I have no idea. What are the names of the Teletubbies?
What is a Teletubby?
A Teletubby is essentially you mix like a 1980s television with Grimace from McDonald's. I think that's what it is.
Well,
I mean,
I'll tell you what
prove
it's
me
not.
wrong.
I'll tell you what it's not. It's not as cool as this play where you are targeting, so hear me out, you are targeting the Aether Ashwing with this frosting, and it's important for 2 reasons. One, you have to get rid of the Arcane Barrier, but also, while we were talking about Teletubbies, the Dromai player put down a ward that is great at soaking up damage, and so you had to find a way to get rid of it. We saw there the activation does finally push through, but this is that weird back and forth check and balance as both players try to navigate getting to a point where you can threaten lethal. The Dromai player was in the driver's seat for so many turns.
Exactly.
And all it took was one off turn for Logan to get back into this. And now cleaning up these Aether Ashwings means in the future that damage can go face. Now, again, Arcane Barrier and 2 sources of Quell still exist, but if you can burn through those Quells and you can prevent them from getting the Aether Ashwings specifically up and running, you're going to create a window.
Well, let's just rewind this a couple turns. The score was 11-2. Logan donated an entire hand, went down to 2. Here we are now. Logan's up a point, and his opponent is down 5. That is progress. That is absolute progress. You're not only climbing the mountain, but you're kicking them down at 2. So it's pretty sweet. And in this case, being able to not just nullify those arcane barriers by just picking off those Aether Ashwings. Beyond that, like Logan had to, I think, pitch and block with Singe. Like 2 Singes were gone. Those are such clutch pieces in this matchup. But he has been very masterful and patient. He found his window, and now he's taking back the tempo, and that is very important.
Absolutely. The mental has been strong because they were down a lot of health very quickly. They were on defense very quickly, and they have hung in and not just survived. Like sometimes when you're playing these games and you get low, you can spend 4 or 5 turns just surviving, but at the end of it, you never really make progress. They have hung in, survived, and started to claw back. They have literally swung the momentum back. We now see more damage landing on the Dromai player, and this is no longer just a runaway game for the Dragon Master. This is definitely something that Iyslander can pull off.
Absolutely. I mean, Iyslander, out of all 3 heroes, Iyslander is by no means the new kid on the block, but Logan is certainly hanging tough into this one, just really holding on and changing the dynamic, changing the landscape here.
This is another red rake, and this means 3 dragons. All that we're getting rid of them, 3 dragons are up because it's red. Go Again is live on each of them. But here's the thing. If you've got another attack in your hand or another action and it has Go Again, we might see that first because the Phantasm has kind of come back to bite the Dromai player a couple of times. And yeah, we are seeing that now. So another activation here as well. This is, again, the Mirage, the Billowing Mirage. So you're going to have to deal with this attack and then potentially 4 dragons.
Logan is just weighing his options here. Again, this is a team format. Logan has access to his teammates' knowledge, experience, everything. You know, he can go ahead and seek counsel right next door, but they're in their own game. And this is part of that entire, you know, we talk about seat meta. Who's in the middle? What's that? Usually you put your either quickest player in the middle, your best player in the middle, just so both players will have access to, you know, consult with that player. But you know, you're in the top 4. All of these players are really good.
I was just thinking that if we were ever on a team, we are definitely A and C.
Oh, I am. If there's a D, I was gonna say if there's a D, but then then Dalen would come in and be like,
yeah, somewhere
yeah, there'd be D jokes.
Somewhere the hair on the back of Dalen's neck is standing up. Yeah. His D senses are tingling.
For sure, you'd go there and be like, so Dalen, how did Team Sealed go? What letter were you? D.
No, that's
a niche joke.
That's big shimmers for you.
Big shimmers the whole way.
Logan here, again, faced with a very tough task. You have to block this attack. You have to deal with all of the dragons. You're down to 1 at this point. And you still have the full 4 cards. Here we see, again, Phantasm. So this is why I had pointed out before. You've been burned by it a few times. You want to take that attack before you go into the dragons. Heads up play by the Dromai player, but again, great play by Logan to try to shut this turn down. I assume that it was successful. There is still 1 card in the hand of the Dromai player, and with those boots active, if it was a blue pitch, you could have done that to try to push the lethal, but
no,
not the case.
Logan's out here is to buy tempo. And if you got to give up that card, you got to give up the card. Where else are you gonna slam that? But look at this. Logan now has defended. Priority is now, I believe, perhaps the Dromai player may have said, all right, move to end step. And this is where Logan's now going to start fighting back. And the player needs to have the card in hand in order to activate the arcane barrier. All right, so Logan's going to connect perhaps with damage. What did he play there? That's what I'm missing, but
I believe it was a polar cap. I think it was a blue polar cap. It was not one of the premier spells, and so I know it's covered by the glare right now, but it was a frosting pitch, and so now we have the ice bind coming, and it is a fused ice bind. So this again is, I believe, one of the ones that has a freeze effect on it. We've seen it a few times today.
Yeah, it should be 3 arcane, and on the fusion, I believe if it connects, it's like it either freezes the arsenal. So it'll freeze the arsenal. It's just a 0 attack that does 3 damage, but 3 damage is very critical here. It's 3 damage that is threatening to freeze that arsenal. There's 2 arcane barrier up. I believe there's also some of those clothes are going to protect against this, like weather this storm a little bit. You got to pitch to block this. I think that is clutch here in order to keep yourself away from Waning Moon territory. But the problem is even if this connects, I don't think there's any circumstance where Logan gives up his arsenal.
All right, so instead it was the combination of the 2 dragons and the boots that were used there. It was a blue pitch for all 3 arcane barrier. The clothes were not used. And so that is something that Logan will have to address at some point. If he wants to push enough damage to get lethal, he will have to get rid of his opponent's clothes.
Yeah, I think 2 dragons and some boots is like the name of an old Clint Eastwood Western, actually. You know, like Fistful of Dollars, 2 dragons and some boots.
That is a fantastic transition. I saw you almost stumble when I talked about removing an opponent's clothes, but you just recovered.
I'm a professional, Derek Oswalt. I'm a professional. Okay, even when you look at me with those creamy eyes, all right, I am just absolutely locked and loaded, razor focused on this match because this match has been brilliant.
All right, so getting back to the match here, we see some Quell finally triggering on the gloves and the other pieces of equipment from the Icelander player, but this is a big attack coming again with Go Again. Just when you think, okay, like I can maybe deal with these dragons, Dromai says, by the way, I can do my best Fi impression and just play straight up attacks with Go Again. This is interesting here. We're going to see the defense and I believe that was a payment for more quell. Because again, the quell, once you activate it, you can do it across multiple targets. So we saw the pitch go, the floating resources. I'm going to assume that that was a quell to pay for the rest of the attack value that was there.
There's that Singe. Again, the Singe was so clutch. This is just, it's kind of tough here. Again, Logan back on the back foot. In retreat mode again, back against the wall, and you're just weathering the storm. He needs to take steps forward, but look at how important that life gain was. Hanging on for dear life just by a thread here. No arsenal at all, and how many cards left? My goodness, there's like probably one more turn. If Dromai here can just buy that hand, it's just a matter of time. Like we mentioned, it's that Mission Impossible, light the fuse, she burns, we're almost. And now it's not just life total, it's also the deck. That candle is lit at both ends.
I was just going to say, it's so interesting because Logan did such a fantastic job getting back into this game, and now it feels like we're right back to where we were when it was bad for him. He's back to no arsenal, just on defense with multiple dragons on the board. So it's, disheartening if you're Logan, but also we've seen him come back from this. The issue, as you pointed out, is that now his deck is significantly smaller. Can't tell for certain, but as I'm kind of just looking at the pile there, he's probably got about 8-9 cards total left between his hand and his deck. So this is something that you're going to have to manage, and the Dromai player just dropping these big attacks that need to be dealt with.
I like that he's pitching for Quell here because it does give a little bit more runway for his deck, right? It's not, he could just commit these to full block, but quelling some of this damage is also going to be important, mainly because you're refilling your deck. You're giving yourself a little bit more margin here, a little bit more runway to actually extend this game if you can get there. Now, what he's possibly hoping for is for the Dromai player to stumble.
Well, I was just about to say, I think the biggest issue right now, when you look at the deck size and you look at the Dromai player, the moment that the Dromai player stumbles, you still can't get through unless you deal with these Aether Ashwings because of the Arcane Barrier. So you're going to have to clean them up. You don't have a reusable weapon. We've talked about this a few times on the broadcast. You don't have an easy way to just say, okay, I'll Kadachi this dragon. So knowing you need cards to even turn on your weapon, this is a tall order. I don't know that there's actually enough damage left in the deck or enough activations left in the deck to push this through.
It's tough. The difference here, frankly, is that even though Dromai doesn't have a weapon that swings, the Ashwings do. And those swing, and that's good enough, especially when Logan's at 1.
Right. Well, that's what I meant. The Logan side of things. As long as those Ashwings are there,
danger zone.
You can't kill your opponent, and you can't clean them up without spending cards.
Singe, and he's already utilized the bunch. Look at that. There's nothing left in that pile. This is just a matter of time, unfortunately. Logan has been very resilient in this match. Again, keep in mind, it was as dire as 11-2, and then it got to, I believe it was 6-3. It was in reach. What Logan needed was just for one turn for that Dromai player to just not have a four swing attack.
Well, so there's that. The other really, I think, important thing to highlight is we've seen, whether it was used as blocking or pitch, I think 3 total singed, and yet none of them actually got played. So your best tool at dealing with these dragons never hit the board. You had to clean these up one by one, and I think that's why we're seeing Logan in the fatigue position, because you never got that 2-for-1 or that 3-for-1 value.
It's a matter of time, folks. Unfortunately, I think Logan here is just kind of going through the motions, making it as difficult as possible, but you never know. Something might happen. A player may make a mistake. You never know. He's got a hand, and the question is it, yeah, this is difficult. And Logan is just saying, and then?
1 card in hand, 1 card in arsenal, and a dream. And Scar for Scar is going to clean it up. So congratulations to the Dragon Master, the Dromai, taking it down. Unfortunately, Logan losing there. But important to note, Team Sealed. Just because we saw Logan lose does not mean that he will not be advancing. It's going to come down to what did the other 2 teammates do.
Yeah, you can always rely on your teammates to pick you up in any team event or any team sport or whatnot. You can kind of lean on your teammates to just sort of give you that lift as necessary. I mean, that match was tough to begin with from Logan's position, but he played it masterfully. We thought that, in my mind, I'm like, this is just going to be a matter of time, but that was so long ago. The fact that Logan was able to actually not just survive as long as he did, but actually turn the tide, to create a momentum swing in his favor. You stumble a bit, but he played it very well. But the Dromai player, and I think the pivotal part of that entire turn was when it was the transformation of 3 Ash into 3 Ash Wings in one foul swoop. That was absolutely the turning point in that match.
I mean, there was a few turning points in the match, but that was the cinching one. That's the closing one. The red rake the embers, just too much to come back from after Logan had battled back. But I will say this is now the second time on the broadcast we've seen Icelander versus Dromai, and the game has been very close, very back and forth. I think that these are two heroes that are very fun to watch when they're going head-to-head like this, and I hope that this is a glimpse to our future for Constructed as well, because I think that these are going to be some fun heroes to enjoy in that format.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed it a bit, and the fact here is that it's sealed, right? And the amount of ice cards might not be ideal for Icelander, but you have Tales of Aria that you can lean on as that hero to sort of dig into what is available. Maybe you just improve it. A lot of the talk about these heroes, especially from the classic constructed format for Icelander, has been, can it get through? Can it get it done? And amidst a sideboard of Arcane Barrier, etc., can she actually connect for damage? Well, a lot of people think that that's not the case, but the conversation was also that Icelander was very strong in this format, but weak, and ultimately turned out to be kind of faltering and sort of sputtering out as that meta evolves. So who knows? Things can change.
Yeah, well, with that in mind, that is it for our on-broadcast portion of this round, but there is still plenty to go. Again, this was the top 4, so we're going to have, I believe, the finals when we come back.
Yes, we were going to see who emerges dominant in this tournament. Badump thump. We done! I am absolutely done overflexing my ability to use cards for conversations. But don't you worry, because we will, there is absolutely a ray of hope left for one team to emerge victorious. So please, friends, let's not cross the line with all these puns. Arcanic Crackle.
I am whelmed by this bit.
Don't go too far. We will be right back with the finals here at the Realm Gaming Team Sealed for Uprising. No rest for the wicked. It's time for the final. We were just like out of breath. We were basically, what were we doing? We were lifting heavy objects and just demonstrating giant feats of strength. And then the producer just cut in.
Picking things up and putting it down and grunting and
solving,
just lamenting in our Y chromosomes. But now we're gonna take on the finals of this Team Sealed event for our Uprising event here at the Realm Games. And I'm excited to crown a winner. And I'm so excited for this matchup. I want you to know at home, because we're going to be accused of rigging this, but we actually randomly determined who is going to be on camera for this. And we're going to have Brendan taking on Logan. It's going to be, I think, a great final, but also I think Brendan was a little upset that we had him on camera again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we were discussing this, and again, unfortunately, Brendan is, you talk about X1s, XOs, and et cetera. Brendan's an OX when it comes to camera games, but in this case, you can see there's a lot of fun happening, a lot of laughs as the games are just kicking off. It's two great teams. Again, Brendan, Patrick, Michael Feng, and that team, there's Jordan and Logan. So much fun going on. The team event has just been so fantastic, Charmer, and it's off to the races. Again, there's no chopping of this prize pool. Both players are playing not only for pride, but for the cashola as well, as both teams have been, so resilient in this tournament.
Yeah, as you said, no split. So everything on the line here for these finals. And as we can see, this is a FI mirror. The way that the seating lined up, I believe it was all mirrors across the board. So just who's the best of each hero 2 out of 3 times, that's going to determine the winner. This one is likely going to be over very quickly, as we have seen earlier, and I have experienced through many events. FI mirrors are over in a flash.
5 years are over in a flash, and I also want to bring it to people's attention that the return of the intimate tag, as it has not just been printed, it has been written with love, with the hand strokes of a pen and paper. It is just beautiful. That is a truly intimate tagline. There it is. The intimate is on the board.
This is an intimate tag that was crafted intimately by hand and with love.
All right.
And smiles from our caster from yesterday, Brendan, who is now, of course, playing as he shares it with the broadcast.
Yeah, again, like I said, it's all fun and games over here. We're having a good time. As there are things on the line. Don't get me wrong. There's cash prizes. There's the pride, of course, but all these players have really just gone through the gauntlet. It's been a long day, but a lot of flesh and blood has been played, and these 5 mirror matches are, like you said, they are just fireworks both ways.
You know, you talk about the fun and how things are still on the line, etc. I think that's one of my favorite things specifically about the Flesh and Blood community is that it is very, very friendly, sportsman-like. Even when you're at these kind of like high-stakes moments, you're in the finals of a very relevant event, you're still having fun. You're smiling. It's a great environment to be in. The vibe this entire weekend has been fantastic. And speaking of vibes, this is quite the vibe as the damage is coming towards Brendan, now down to 14 after those Phoenix Flames.
Basically, I mean, the first order of business is making sure that you have a Phoenix Flame in your graveyard. That is oftentimes the first hindrance when it comes to playing FI, is just remembering that you got to put a Phoenix Flame in your graveyard. So the clapback is beginning. Brendan Patrick, again, not giving up any of the tempo, holding on to some cards here to start taking damage, and Jordan is completely content to keep a full grip and just go for it. Another pitch. There's the Ember Blade, and I think that Brendan Patrick here is probably just he's gonna continue the onslaught. This is fascinating.
Right, so this was a Rising Resentment into the Ember Blade, and now I believe this is a Stoke the Flames. Now, if you're not familiar, this is a card that has 4 attack, but it has an on hit, which says if it hits, you can return a Phoenix Flame to your hand, and if you do that, it gains Go Again. So it doesn't naturally have Go Again, but if you satisfy the conditions and it gets the on hit, it kind of gains Go Again. So this is one of those ones where you actually might consider blocking it. You might consider hugging it for the intimate experience, as we see the tag now on the table.
Well,
and
I mean, it's intimate because if it touches you, if it reaches out and touches you, Charmer, you get a little bonus. You get that fire, that rising Phoenix.
You stoke the intimacy with Stoke the Flames.
Absolutely, and it looks like that's that kind of penmanship. That's the kind of font you see scribbled on a wall at a haunted house that says "Get out."
Font that somebody who writes in code sends to the police department.
I'm pretty sure that was the Zodiac that wrote that. Nonetheless, again, the on hit is one thing, but pressing damage is important. There was always the opportunity there for after the on hit to just maybe put that Phoenix Flame in the arsenal, continue onward. But in this case, Brendan content to be at 14 and push damage.
We were talking about the importance of Phoenix Flames in the discard pile, but a burn away coming up. So again, this is the one where you can banish a Phoenix Flame to give it Go Again. It's got that 2 attack. Because there were 2 Phoenix Flames in the discard pile, Logan says, okay, I'll just get rid of 1. I can still use my 5 power, and we see the damage taken there as well. So burn away now followed up with the Ember Blade. We're going to have that 1 pitch floating.
Look at this. It's just, I think that life counter has been absolutely spanked relentlessly. Just tap, tap, tap. Look at this. Brendan Patrick's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, do what you got to do. No problem. Phoenix Flame, yeah, mark it down. No worries. And all the way through, big time hit.
So we go all the way through the end, and Brendan was saying, okay, basically, until you force me to block, I'm going to hold onto my hand because I think I have enough to threaten lethal. That has to have been the game plan. However, you get all the way to the end, and then Lava Burst comes down. This is a 0-cost card, but it has Rupture, so it's worth 5. A 0-cost 5 attack to end this combat chain. And so now Brendan's going to likely be forced to block with 2 cards, because even if you've got a block 3 there, it's not going to be enough to keep you away from lethal. And so We see a number of cards used there. One was a Cracked Bauble, which was a proxy for the foil, so that's why you saw him stick it on. It was not a 3-card block, it was just 2, but you were saying, okay, that's what this is a proxy for.
Big Scar for a Scar here. Red 4 go again. That is not insignificant. The question here is, does Jordan suspect that there's a follow-up to this? How many cards does Jordan want to commit here? Because taking the 4 brings you down to 3. That's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong there. The difference here is, what is the other card in Brendan's hand?
If the other card is a yellow or a blue pitch, then you could still follow this up with, for example, an Ember Blade.
Sure.
And then from there, you are threatening lethal. So then you're going to force a block at that point one way or the other. I think that at a minimum, that's the head math you have to do, is saying, I have to block at some point on this turn. There's no way for me to get around it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of back and forth here. Both players just, going for the throat. It's haymakers on both sides. Jordan, Brendan. The FaB mirror is absolutely fiery.
All right, so here's an interesting bit, right? You have this Scar for Scar. Let's just say that's a blue pitch that you're hanging on to there on the side of Brendan. You can follow this up with the blade, but normally you could then pay your 1 pitch to get a Phoenix Flame back. However, the Scar for Scar not being draconic kind of throws whoa, hold on. Doesn't matter. Let's back up. This is not going to be the Ember Blade. This is a Blaze Headlong, so this is a 0 for 4. Pretty big deal, because that's going to be some awkward break points that Logan has to consider.
But there's no more tricks here, right? If that connects, what happens? Does Jordan just go down to 1 and then come back with a full, with 3 cards and makes it awkward? I mean, it's a tough situation here, because I don't think there's any way for Brendan to go over top on this. It's not necessarily threatening lethal. If it's coming in for 4, what can you really do to peel a card away from Jordan, who might feel confident that he can get there?
Yeah, there's not, unfortunately, any tricks that you can do, because that Scar for Scar is not draconic. If the Scar for Scar was draconic and you're at 2 chain links, then you could say sacrifice your sash to use your FaB ability to get back a Phoenix Flame, and then use the Phoenix Flame to threaten damage and even more because of the Heat Wave. But because the Scar for Scar does not have the draconic tag, there's no way you're going to be able to get the Phoenix Flame back. It is, however, intimate, as we can see on the screen.
Now there's an on-hit. It's love. Love is the on-hit effect.
Love is the on-hit. So we do see a block come down. 3 health on the side of Logan, 2 health on the side of Brendan. Brendan's about to draw up. Did not get to arsenal a card. Only 2 cards in the hand of Logan. We've hit my favorite point in the game in these FaB mirrors, where both players are now, for the rest of the game, not going to be playing with a full hand. You're going to see likely 2-card hands back and forth until somebody finds a way to push the damage through.
You know what finds a way? Love. Love finds a way. And the on-hit effect of intimacy is always a threat in this matchup, as both of them are fiery. These FaB decks back and forth have been trading blows, and now it's come to this point, and it's kind of like you get to the edge, you're going full throttle, you're going 60 miles an hour straight to that cliff, and once you get there, both players have to slam the brakes and start actually making decisions. It's real nasty. Like you mentioned, Scar for a Scar was a great card to play, do not get me wrong, but the fact that it wasn't draconic is a hindrance to what this deck wants to do, and both players are kind of operating without an arsenal here because of what it represents, because playing a card peels a card away from the opponent, and you cannot let your opponent have any tempo at all. So you're sacrificing your own arsenal to continue to maintain the pressure, and it's tough. It's tough, but look at the equipment difference here. Heat Wave is he rolling Heat Wave? No, he's rolling. Is that Heat?
You're
That
talking
is
about
Heat Wave.
Brendan. Brendan does have a
Brendan
Heat Wave,
does
but
have Heat
he
Wave.
is in a 4-stack. He's got his sash where his arms should be. His arms are just kind of floating, etc., etc. But yes, there is a Heat Wave there. So with these 2-card hands, I think one of the keys, I say 2 cards because I'm just making the natural assumption that's what's going to go back and forth, but the first player that can figure out a way to work a Phoenix Flame in will have a big advantage, and that Heat Wave extends Brendan's advantage. However, on the other side, Logan has 3 health, so even with the Heat Wave, a single Phoenix Flame isn't enough to threaten lethal by its own.
Both players are really deep in thought here. Again, you can see just the gears turning.
I think the real issue right now is that this is an attack that is coming that likely needs to be blocked. and Brendan has to work out what his counter attack will be. But also, this is a 0 cost attack, and there is a sash on the other side. And so if you're worried about some of the attack reactions, that's something to consider. But instead, we see it followed up with the Searing Emberblade. That was a Rise from the Ashes pitched, which also would have been a fantastic card to try to close this out. But again, you have to keep the pressure, so ultimately no arsenal of it, saving it for later. And as I said, if you can get a Phoenix Flame out, then you might be on your way, but Brendan now down to 1.
So I wonder where this is going to go. Brendan's going to have to get some cards out of Jordan's hand, knowing that if Jordan plays with 4 cards, that's potentially 5 attacks, and you can't let that happen.
So I think this was maybe the frustration with the way the blocks went the previous turn, because we saw Brendan play this and then kind of motion toward it. This is Mounting Anger. This is the one that has the on hit where you can banish a card from your hand, and then it gains a bonus to attack. And there is a chance that this could still hit because of the 3 health. So that would have been a relevant on hit. But now, with no other cards left in your hand, you can't take advantage of it.
These are the critical moments. I know we were talking about how these 5 decks and these 5 mirrors are really lightning fast. They're but it's kind of like a basketball game where the last 2 minutes, last 15 minutes, you know what I mean? Like it's just kind of how this goes. It's so critical at the end because this is where the blocking occurs. Nobody's really giving cards away until you're 5 or under, and that's where we're at. We're at this juncture where you got to actually feel good here. If you're Brendan, you got damage through. That's progress, and you got to be happy about that, especially when you said there's a heat wave.
Ooh. So this is 2 chain links. This is going to be the sash for a Phoenix. The question is, are you going to play it? Because with the heat wave, you can threaten lethal, or are you going to arsenal it? It does look like it's coming down.
All right. I mean, this is as close to the edge as you can. Eventually, someone's going to have to be tipped over and fall off here, as they're both at 1, clinging to life. Tempo is in Jordan's favor to a degree. This is tough. You mentioned 2 card hands is what it seems to be.
Right, so this is ultimately going to turn on what I call the awkward breakpoints, right? You want attacks for 4, and this Blaze Headlong is huge for that. The reason that 4 is important is because it means at least 2 cards from your opponent. Even if they have a block for 3, you're going to eat a second card, and then that means no longer a 2-card hand, maybe even a 1-card hand. The other place that this could turn in the other direction is if a player draws a hand that has a bunch of 2 blocks. Yes, there are 3 blocks in the class cards, but Ninja actually has a number of cards, especially in this set, that are still only 2 blocks despite being class cards. So cards like Blaze Headlong, not a Ninja card, but Draconic also has a 2-block. Cards like Scar for Scar also has a 2-block. So the combination of somebody drawing a bunch of 2 blocks or somebody having multiple attacks for 4, like the Blaze Headlong or some of these 1 for 4s, is where this game is going to turn in one direction or the other. And I think you see Brendan, frustrated knowing that this has to be blocked with 2 cards. There's just no way around it. The 4 is just an awkward break point, and that means you're going to go into your round with now a 1-card hand. And the worst part is you likely can't take that off. You can't just Arsenal pass, because if you're on the defense in this matchup, you're probably going to lose. But attacking, even if it's just with the sword, you're only going to get 1 card back from your opponent. And so this is one of those things where you talk about momentum, right? And I was saying it's going to be 2-card hand versus 2-card hands. I think Brendan's now realizing that unless he catches a break, he's now officially in the 1-card hand versus 3-card hands for the foreseeable future.
That's tough. That's absolutely tough. Breakpoints are so clutch. So Brendan knows what's up. He's, you see the sash break, the recursion of the Phoenix Flame. Brendan already knew what card he was going to give away. He's just going to drop the 4.
He only had 1 card left in hand, so he basically is just throwing it in the discard pile knowing that that's going to be blocked. They're just saying it very quickly back and forth, but that's exactly what happened. I get Phoenix Flame, I block, okay, move.
Brand with Cinderclaw is a great start. I don't know if that's yellow.
It does look like a yellow to me. But
you know what it looks like? It looks like a card out of Brendan's hand.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter which version it is. It swings and it threatens lethal. All the attacks for both players right now have an on hit of kill the opposing player.
Yeah, those are good. No more intimacy. It's pure death in its best form. So parsing out the hand here, again, block efficiency is the most important aspect of this particular situation. If that's a 2, you block with 2. You know that that the Cinderblade is a 3. It's the 4s that are dangerous. Even the 1s can be problematic.
Well, the most dangerous thing right now are potentially attack reactions, because we were talking earlier about how Ninja has access to, the better reflex. And that is going to be a victory for Logan. Does finally go wide enough.
Jordan.
Jordan.
Oh, we don't know. I mean, there could be a victory for Logan as well.
Logan was also playing right now, so my apologies.
Keep in mind that also, this entire 3-pack here they were all mirror matches. Every single one was a mirror match. So I think the most complex one is going to be that Icelander match. And but we saw Logan already, so we're going to see how they're navigating. But there's also the Aether Ashwings versus the Aether Ashwings. It's just such a fascinating dynamic. Excuse me, I'm getting emotional. We do not know who won yet, because we just saw the fastest match probably resolve, as the others are still probably going strong. We will let you know when there is a resolution to this tournament.
Yeah, definitive winner. We have to let them know who the winning team is.
Well, yeah. You know who the winners are? Us, because we got to be here. We got to bring you this match, these matches, and again, we were thinking about in terms of discussing about how these team events can be better broadcast to you out there in Twitch land and across, wherever you're consuming this kind of stuff. And for now, it's one camera at a table for all 3 teams, and it's an evolutionary process in terms of how to present
we talked
these.
about lots of options. I was mentioning drone coverage, right? You just get a nice low-flying indoor drone to just go down all the tables. We can get the sky cam like the NFL has on a string.
Yeah,
you just get that.
We've contacted NASA to get access to the Hubble telescope, possibly, if that's still even in service. I don't know, to just zoom in. We've discussed with the contractors about just creating, or maybe replacing the roof with some sort of glass contraption, some sort of dome situation.
We have considered constructing like an AR presentation, so when they play a card, then things happen in 3D, like some of your favorite anime, for example.
Yeah, or like the Dejarik game board in Star Wars. You have the pieces moving around. Like, how cool would it be? You go ahead, you have Phi, who's kind of like your avatar. That's who you're representing, right? You pitch, you create, you summon the Phoenix Flame, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just and then and fire and brimstone.
It's like Wizard's chess, but Wizard's flesh and blood.
Wizard chess, yes. But yeah, it's basically what's going on here. So the games are still going on. We don't want to talk too loud, but we are excited to figure out how this goes, because frankly, both of those teams are awesome people, awesome competitors.
Awesome competitors. They are stacked. They are well-deserved to be in the finals. I mean, when you see these teams, you're saying, okay, I understand what happened here, and it's just something I'm really excited to see the conclusion of.
Yeah, and I got to say, I mean, like the whole situation of a team event, there's going to be people who are going to, I don't want to say carry a team, but people are going to have better records on their team. There are people who are going to have more wins and losses, but that's not what it's about. It's about the team dynamic. The players who might be losing more than they're winning are there also to support their teammates, offer advice, etc. So, it is in fact a team event. We don't even want to talk about individual records and this and that, because you never know how the cards sort of fell and how the pools looked. But ultimately, this has been an exquisite, awesome experience here at the Realm Gaming in Ohio. I hope there's more. I hope that team events just become more of a norm situation. I know that talking to people like, for instance, Tariq Patel was somebody who had mentioned more team events.
Yes.
Need them.
Yeah, I like them because it also just brings a different dynamic in terms of strategy, whether it's sealed or not. The idea of recruiting a team that works well together, plays well together. I also just really enjoy the dynamic with Flesh and Blood because you have the heroes, right? So depending on the format, going with the, you can only bring one of each type of hero type thing. I think that it just really opens up a different kind of meta and a different kind of school of thought, because you can't just all play the best deck, for example. And you might think about, okay, what are the team matchups we might run into and how do we prepare for that? It's just, I think about the time that we've spent with the players that you and I interact with a lot, and when they talked about how to construct their team. It wasn't just like, okay, well, here's the best deck list of 80 cards. What do I bring? Instead, it was, what are the best 3 decks? And then how do we prepare for other groups of 3, right? And it's just so much fun when you dive into the specifics, and I hope we get more.
Well, the other cool part about this was that the rules stated that you did not have to represent all 3 heroes. You could have a pocket, you could have a pair of Phais and an Icelander. You could have 2 Icelanders if you wanted to. It wouldn't make sense, but still. And I'm really curious to see after the fact how many teams actually diverted away from one hero versus another. Maybe it's hard to say that 5 pools can be bad because they're so loaded with just, full throttle aggression. But I mean,
I do think it makes sense to do one of each because you can take essentially the best of each class card and then just fill in the rest, right? You're really only fighting over the scraps, the generics, but it is also sealed, right? So it's not unthinkable for you to get 2 loaded Phi decks or just not open nearly enough blues for anybody to run Icelander, for example. So I'm also curious to see how many teams did the non-traditional choice of multiples of the same hero.
It's something that we'll have to think about and mull over, as I believe the games are just kind of wrapping up. I mean, I don't know what's coming after this, if we're going to have an interview with the winner or a presentation. Nonetheless, we're going to take a very short break. We will be back soon in Ohio, and we're going to wrap up the Realm Gaming Uprising Team Sealed. We got crowded space over here. I'm trying to poke my head through the Champions Charmer. It has been quite the weekend. Look, we're surrounded by champions, buddy.
Yeah, this is the first time that I've had this much success in the booth all weekend long because I've been stuck with mostly you, though Brendan here yesterday did a fantastic job as well. And now we've got the winners of the team event. So even though we had Brendan on and he was cursed, the 2 teammates came in clutch at the end.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I know we felt bad. We flipped a coin to see if Brendan was going to go on there, and the O&X continues for Mr. Brendan Patrick, but it's all good. You got bailed out. It's a team event, boys.
It's 1 X, please. I won one.
So you got one under the belt. How do you boys feel? I mean, the whole team dynamic doing this. Is this something you guys enjoy?
Oh,
I think we were a good team.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Definitely.
The last round, I mean, you overheard it. We were in a situation Youngji was the last one playing. And Youngji and Michael sitting there thinking oh, we gotta kill this drag and kill that drag, stuff. But you still have 15. I was like, 15? I was like, go face! What are you doing? So we had to get really lucky actually because he drew a card off the Snatch Dragon, and we needed to not be a threat, and it wasn't. And then we just went face. We win. But I mean, you guys played amazing. I think you were undefeated.
Yeah, there was not even. I got blessed. I just draw Icelander pools like crazy.
Yeah, Michael carries the weight. I mean, in these team events, somehow I'm always the last one to finish. Last week at Vegas, that was the ultimate. Everybody finishes watching my match. I was oh, please don't make mistakes. Don't get roasted.
Yeah, I personally want to ask about that team dynamic at the end because, you said you guys were deliberating, and then I know you said send it face, but it was a little bit more colorful there at the time. But what is that like when you're playing? Because I think many of us are used to the one-on-one dynamic. It's just you and your opponent. But when you're in these team events and you can actually rely on your teammates and kind of get that advice, what changes about the game at that point?
Pretty funny because we almost never speak to each other. Yeah. We almost never speak to each other. My game was usually over in 5 minutes, but I would come over, and the only thing I would do, because Youngji and Michael are just kind of better than me, I would just track their opponent's pitch, but it wasn't relevant because we're playing Uprising here. But on that last turn, I guess we did have a little bit of deliberation. We did the math, and it was we were losing the game, by the way. Wait, what about when Dagan... They deliberated for a long time. We basically presented a phantasm. They deliberated. They blocked with Quell, and then they go, oh wait, and then they used a popper.
Well, I mean, they might that might have lost them the game actually because that gave us a free window later on. We didn't lose any tempo. We got an Arsenal red. It was that was the bait. That was we were hoping they popped that actually. So good. That'd be good for us, I think.
Yeah, and we drew a timely popper.
Oh my god, off the top.
Yeah,
when we popped that, I was like, woo!
That popper drew us 2 cards. Because we blocked 8 with it. That's plus. Oh my god.
Off the transmogrify, right off the top.
That's what really
that's why you got to pitch your deck just to rip it right off the top.
Gotta practice. They had 3 poppers, and I ended up with 2
Like
of them.
this energy is exactly why I love team events. You and I were talking about how it just changes, and even though you said, hey, we didn't talk much throughout the day, this right here, this kind of camaraderie and the celebration, and this is exactly what I love about these events.
No, these are great. You guys are awesome. I want to congratulate you again, and on behalf of Realm Games and everything, you guys rocked it, and it was just a lot of fun. So go enjoy yourselves, celebrate. Any parting shots before we say goodbye?
No, it was an awesome tournament. Thank
I
you.
love
to
you,
Realm Games.
Leslie.
Yeah, thank you to Realm Games. The field was sick, right? We had Michael Hamilton playing. We had this guy named Michael Feng playing today. Multiple calling champions playing. Like, this is a hard team event. Battle-hardened champions.
Top 8
participation. Like
Participation. Brendan's here. It's great. It was all good.
We got the intimate trigger back, so that's what we need.
That was MVP.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just changed the whole climate. Was just one. So the on-hit effect was love, frankly, and that was just what's important in that. So, boys, thank you so much. Everybody out there, thank you as well. For myself, Flake Charmer as well. Send us off, buddy. Non-Carolina style.
I'll see you soon. No, thankfully, I don't have to do it the cheesy way. Thank you for joining us at the Realm Games. Again, hopefully we'll get to do these soon. Go play Flesh and Blood. Get your friends and neighbors to play it. It's a fantastic game. And with that, we are done. Thank you for watching.